the viewport of Anakin Skywalker's Eta-2 Actis interceptor filled with fire as another separatist vulture droid exploded under his lightsaber-precise cannon fire. The space above Christophsis had become a graveyard of twisted metal and debris, each piece representing a small victory in the Republic's desperate defense of the system. "Anakin, watch your six," Ahsoka's voice crackled through the comm. "You've got 3 more closing fast." "I see them, Snips," Anakin replied, his fingers dancing across the controls with the unconscious grace of someone born to fly. The Force sang through him, a symphony of warning and opportunity that let him anticipate every movement of the enemy fighters before they made them. He rolled inverted, cutting thrust, letting momentum carry him as the vulture droids overshot. A quick burst from his cannons, and 2 more enemies became expanding clouds of plasma. The third droid was smarter, or its programming was better. It broke hard to port, circling around for another attack vector. Anakin pursued, pushing his interceptor to the edge of its performance envelope. This was where he lived, in the razor's edge between control and chaos, where reflexes and instinct mattered more than planning or caution. The droid led him through the debris field, a deadly game of cat and mouse. Anakin's precognition screamed a warning a split second before the trap sprung. 3 more vulture droids emerged from behind a disabled Republic cruiser, their cannons already firing. He yanked the control yoke hard, feeling the G-forces press him into his seat despite the inertial dampeners. But something was wrong. The starfield through his viewport began to ripple, like heat distortion, except they were in the vacuum of space where that was impossible. The Force, usually so clear in its warnings, suddenly felt turbulent, chaotic, like he was trying to read a message written in water. "Anakin," Ahsoka's voice was distant now, breaking up with static. "Your signature it's like you're breaking up." The space in front of him split open. There was no other way to describe it. Reality itself tore like fabric, revealing something beyond that his mind struggled to comprehend. Colors that shouldn't exist, dimensions folded in ways that violated every law of physics he knew. Through the rift, he glimpsed impossible things, geometric shapes that hurt to look at, energy patterns that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. And then gravity seized his fighter with the strength of a planetary mass. No, no, no. Anakin fought the controls as his interceptor was dragged toward the rift. He fired his repulsors at full power, trying to break free, but it was like trying to escape a black hole. The dimensional tier pulled at him with inexorable force, and through the force he felt something vast and ancient on the other side, something that was aware of him. His fighter crossed the threshold. Pain exploded through every nerve as the universe turned inside out. Anakin experienced a moment of pure sensory chaos. He was everywhere and nowhere, existing across infinite possibilities simultaneously. Through the Force, he felt the presence of trillions of lives, but they were wrong somehow, their signatures alien and strange. This wasn't his galaxy. Reality reasserted itself with violent abruptness. His fighter's system screamed warnings as entirely different laws of physics took hold. The hyperdrive, trying to compensate for conditions it was never designed for, began tearing itself apart. Alarms wailed as containment fields failed, and the reactor went critical. Anakin had perhaps 3 seconds to register that he was in atmosphere. Impossible. He'd been in deep space, falling toward a cityscape unlike any he'd ever seen, before the ejection protocols activated automatically. The cockpit blew away, his pilot's seat rocketing clear on emergency repulsors, as his beloved fighter began its terminal descent. Through the Force, Anakin reached out, trying to slow the fighter's fall to prevent it from hitting the buildings below. He'd done this before, caught falling ships, stopped missiles in midair. But he was disoriented, weakened by whatever passage through that rift had done to him, and the fighter was too massive, moving too fast. It clipped the edge of a towering building, glass and steel, not durasteel. His mind noted with detached confusion, and spun wildly, shedding pieces as it fell. Anakin could see people in the streets below, hundreds of them directly in the impact zone. Civilians, innocents. No. He thrust both hands forward, drawing on the Force with every ounce of strength he possessed. The fighter's descent slowed, not stopped but redirected, guided by invisible hands toward an open area he could sense ahead. His muscles strained, veins standing out on his forehead as he wrestled with momentum and mass. The fighter slammed into what appeared to be a public plaza with enough force to crack pavement and send up a geyser of sparks and smoke, but it missed the civilians. Anakin's emergency seat touched down seconds later, repulsors cushioning his landing as he unbuckled with shaking hands. He stood, legs unsteady, and immediately his hand went to his lightsaber. Years of combat instinct, of being ready for anything. The weapon's familiar weight was reassuring in a situation where nothing else made sense. The plaza around him was chaos. People were screaming, running in all directions. The architecture was all wrong, too angular, too much glass and steel, not enough curves. The writing on signs was in languages he didn't recognize. Even the air tasted different, thick with pollutants his body wasn't accustomed to. Where in the blazes was he? Everybody down. The shout came from above. Anakin looked up to see a figure in gleaming red and gold armor descending on repulsor jets, technology that looked similar to his own fighter systems, but configured in a way he'd never imagined. A man in a flying suit of armor, artificial but elegant, the chest piece glowing with some kind of power source that reminded him of a reactor core. The armored figure landed 20 meters away, repulsors kicking up dust. Weapons systems on the shoulders and forearms swiveled to track Anakin. A heads-up display was visible through the helmet's eye slits. "Don't move. We've got civilian casualties from your little stunt, and I'm not in a generous mood." Anakin's hand tightened on his lightsaber but didn't ignite it. Not yet. He reached out through the Force, trying to sense the man's intentions. What he felt surprised him. Concern for the civilians, yes, but also curiosity. A brilliant mind analyzing the situation at incredible speed, and beneath it all, fear carefully controlled. This was a protector, not an enemy. Probably. "I didn't mean," Anakin started, but his words were cut off by a massive explosion from several blocks away. The shockwave rolled across the plaza, shattering windows and sending people stumbling. Through the Force, Anakin sensed concentrated malevolence from the explosion's source, and a battle in progress. Multiple combatants, advanced weapons, and civilians in danger. "Damn it, the AIM facility," the armored man muttered, clearly receiving information through his suit systems. "They're making their move while we're distracted with you." He turned back to Anakin. "Stay here. SHIELD will be along to collect you in." "People are dying," Anakin interrupted, already moving toward the explosion. The Force showed him paths through the chaos, directions to take. "I can help." "You can stay put." A repulsor blast impacted the pavement in front of Anakin, not hitting him but clearly a warning. "We don't know what you are or what you want. For all I know, you're with them." Anakin turned, and something in his eyes must have communicated his determination because the armored man took an involuntary step back. "I'm a Jedi Knight of the Galactic Republic," Anakin said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd commanded legions. "I protect the innocent. That's what I am. What I want is to help those people. Are you going to stop me, or are you going to help?" For a moment, the two warriors stared at each other across the rubble-strewn plaza. Then the armored man's weapons retracted slightly. "You try anything at all, and I'll drop you where you stand. Clear?" "Crystal." "Then let's go. Try to keep up, Space Cadet." The armored man launched into the air, repulsors carrying him toward the battle. Anakin reached out through the Force, finding a damaged speeder vehicle. His mind corrected, they called them vehicles here, and with a gesture pulled it toward him. He leapt onto it, using the Force to override whatever primitive control systems it had, and accelerated after his unlikely ally. The street was a war zone. Soldiers in yellow hazmat-style armor were engaged in a running battle with a mixed group of other combatants. Anakin spotted a man with a shield, an actual shield, like something from ancient history, moving with impossible athleticism, deflecting energy weapons with the circular disc. A woman with red hair fought with elegant brutality, her movements speaking of extensive training. And something big and green was smashing through the yellow armored soldiers like they were training droids. The green creature turned, and Anakin got his first clear look at it. Humanoid but massive, easily 3 meters tall, with muscles that would make a Wookiee jealous and skin the color of Dagobah's swamps. It roared, a sound of pure rage, and Anakin felt through the Force something strange. Two minds, one angry and simple, one brilliant and terrified, existing in the same body. "Hulk, we've got civilians pinned down in the building," the woman with red hair shouted, her voice carrying despite the explosions. The green giant, Hulk, apparently turned and leapt, clearing 40 meters in a single bound to land beside a collapsed structure. It began pulling away rubble with surprising care, revealing a group of terrified people huddled beneath. Anakin didn't hesitate. He abandoned the vehicle, flipping through the air to land in a crouch beside the trapped civilians. His lightsaber ignited with its characteristic snap hiss, the blue blade drawing shocked stares from everyone in visual range. "What the?" one of the yellow-armored soldiers began, before Anakin deflected his energy blast back at him with casual precision. The soldier went down, his armor smoking. "Get them out," Anakin shouted to the Hulk, not knowing if the creature would understand or care. But to his surprise, the green giant nodded and redoubled its efforts, creating an opening large enough for the civilians to escape. 3 more yellow-armored soldiers advanced, their weapons firing in coordinated patterns. Anakin's lightsaber became a blur of blue light, each movement guided by precognition and honed by years of combat. The Force showed him where the blasts would be before they were fired, letting him position his blade with impossible accuracy. Deflected shots took down 2 of the attackers. The third, he simply reached out to with the Force and yanked backward, slamming him into a wall with enough force to dent the armor. "How is he doing that?" the man with the shield asked, sounding stunned. "That's not possible." Added to today's list of impossible things, the armored man, Anakin was starting to think of him as Iron Soldier, given the armor, replied. "Right now, I don't care how he's doing it, as long as he's on our side." A soldier with a massive energy cannon emerged from one of the yellow-armored group's vehicles, the weapon charging with an ominous whine. Anakin could sense its power through the Force. It would level this entire block if fired. He thrust his hand forward, channeling the force into a concentrated push. The soldier with the cannon flew backward as if kicked by a bantha, the weapon discharging harmlessly into the sky as he lost control of it. "He's got telekinesis," the red-haired woman observed, ducking behind cover as return fire intensified. "Possible mutant classification, but the energy signature is all wrong. This is something else." "Can we classify him later?" the shield-bearer asked, his disc weapon ricocheting between 3 soldiers with geometric precision. "Right now, we need to finish this before more civilians get hurt." Anakin agreed completely. He reached out through the force, sensing the flow of battle, the positions of every combatant, the structural integrity of the surrounding buildings, the fear of the civilians still in danger. It was like conducting a symphony, seeing how all the pieces fit together. There, a tactical opening. "The one in the back," Anakin called out to his temporary allies, pointing toward a figure in more elaborate armor who was clearly commanding the yellow-suited soldiers. "He's coordinating them. Take him out and they'll fall apart." "How do you?" Iron Soldier began, but Anakin was already moving. He sprinted across the battlefield, lightsaber deflecting incoming fire, his movements augmented by the Force until he was nearly a blur. The yellow-armored commander saw him coming and raised some kind of energy weapon, but Anakin simply gestured, and the weapon tore itself from the man's grip, flying off to clatter uselessly in the distance. The commander's eyes widened behind his helmet. "What are you?" "A Jedi," Anakin replied and slashed his lightsaber through the man's weapon systems, careful not to hit flesh. The armor sparked and died, its systems fried by the plasma blade. "And you're done." The shield-bearer arrived a moment later, delivering a perfectly placed strike that knocked the commander unconscious. With their leader down, the remaining yellow-armored soldiers began falling back, their coordinated assault dissolving into retreat. Anakin deactivated his lightsaber, breathing hard. The battle had lasted perhaps 3 minutes, but the adrenaline made it feel both longer and shorter. Around him, the other fighters were regrouping, checking for casualties, securing the area. And all of them were staring at him. "So," Iron Soldier said, his armor's faceplate retracting to reveal a human face with a neat beard and eyes that were analyzing Anakin with disconcerting intensity. "Jedi Knight of the Galactic Republic. That's not a country I'm familiar with, and I know all of them. You're not from around here, are you?" "I don't even know where here is," Anakin admitted, clipping his lightsaber to his belt. "One moment I was fighting in the Clone Wars above Christophsis, the next I was falling toward your city." "Clone Wars," the red-haired woman repeated, her hand near a weapon on her belt. "Christophsis, none of that computes, Stark." So Iron Soldier had a name. Stark nodded slowly. "Already running every database we have, coming up empty. But that ship he came in on, JARVIS, what's the analysis?" "The wreckage contains technologies and alloys not found in any terrestrial database, sir." A cultured voice responded from apparently nowhere, making Anakin's hand drift toward his lightsaber again. "The power systems appear to operate on principles that violate several known laws of physics. Preliminary assessment suggests extraterrestrial origin." "Alien," the shield-bearer said, but his tone wasn't hostile, curious, evaluating. "That would explain a lot." "Not exactly," Anakin said carefully. This was clearly first contact with whatever civilization existed here, and he'd attended enough diplomatic briefings to know how delicate these situations could be. "I'm human, from a galaxy far from here, if I'm understanding correctly. I didn't mean to come here. Something went wrong during the battle and I was pulled through. Some kind of dimensional rift. The Hulk had shrunk, Anakin noticed with fascination. The massive green creature was now a human man, shorter than Anakin, with dark hair and intelligent eyes that spoke of a keen mind beneath the monster's rage. The transformation had happened while Anakin was talking, and he'd barely noticed. Dimensional rift, Stark repeated, his expression suggesting he was taking this more seriously than Anakin would have expected. That's actually possible theoretically. We've encountered some reality-bending phenomena recently, but the energy requirements to pull something across dimensional boundaries. He trailed off, clearly already calculating in his head. Can we have this conversation somewhere that isn't an active combat zone? The red-haired woman suggested. We still have civilians to evacuate and AIM tech to secure, and SHILD will be here any minute to turn this into a bureaucratic nightmare. As if summoned by her words, Anakin heard the sound of approaching aircraft. He looked up to see several large vehicles descending, black and utilitarian, bristling with weapons. The Force warned him of the hundreds of armed individuals aboard, their intentions focused and disciplined. Too late, Stark muttered. Natasha, grab what you can before Fury gets here and classifies it all. Banner, you good? The man who'd been the Hulk nodded. I'm stable, but I'd like to understand more about our new friend here. That energy he's using, I've never seen anything like it. It's almost like he's manipulating fundamental forces directly without any technology intermediary. Later, the shield-bearer said, his voice carrying natural authority. Right now, we need to present a united front. If this man helped us save lives, and he did, then we owe him our support until we know more. He turned to Anakin, extending a hand in what was clearly a gesture of greeting. Steve Rogers, Captain America, welcome to Earth, specifically New York City. Anakin clasped the offered hand, feeling the surprising strength in the other man's grip. Anakin Skywalker, Jedi Knight, and I appreciate the welcome, but I have just one question. What's that? How do I get home? The looks the others exchanged told Anakin everything he needed to know about how difficult that question was going to be to answer. Before anyone could respond, the black aircraft landed, disgorging soldiers in tactical gear. And from the lead vehicle stepped a man wearing a long black coat and an eye patch, his single eye fixing on Anakin with an intensity that rivaled any Jedi Master's. That, the man said, his voice carrying effortless command, is an excellent question, and you're going to answer a lot of mine before we even think about answering yours. I'm Director Nick Fury of SHIELD, and you, Mr. Skywalker, just became the most interesting person on this planet. Anakin met Fury's gaze without flinching. He'd faced Sith Lords, bounty hunters, and entire droid armies. One stern government official, however intimidating, wasn't going to rattle him. But as SHIELD soldiers surrounded their position, as aircraft circled overhead, as the weight of being stranded in an alien universe began to settle on his shoulders, Anakin felt a familiar darkness whisper at the edge of his consciousness. Fear of being trapped, of never seeing Padme again, of failing in his duty, of losing everything that mattered. He pushed it down, drawing on the Jedi teachings he'd studied since childhood. Fear is the path to the dark side. He would not give in to it. He would find a way home, no matter what it took. But as Director Fury approached, as this strange new world pressed in around him, Anakin couldn't shake the feeling that his arrival here had set something in motion. Something vast and dangerous, with consequences he couldn't yet foresee. Through the Force he felt it, a disturbance like a stone thrown into still water, ripples spreading out in all directions. His presence here was wrong, not in a moral sense but in a fundamental way, as if the universe itself was trying to adjust to an equation that didn't balance. And somewhere in the darkness between dimensions, something noticed those ripples. Something ancient and hungry that sensed opportunity in the chaos of a universe breached. But Anakin, surrounded by wary heroes and suspicious agents in a world he didn't understand, had no way of knowing that yet. The SHIELD facility they'd brought him to was impressive by any standard. Anakin had seen Republic military installations across dozens of worlds, but there was something about this place, the Triskelion, they called it, that spoke of a civilization both advanced and paranoid. Security checkpoints every 20 meters, cameras covering every angle, energy signatures suggesting weapon systems hidden in the walls themselves. They hadn't taken his lightsaber, which surprised him. Fury had studied the weapon with his single eye, listened to Stark's analysis of its exotic energy blade, and then handed it back with a simple directive. Don't give me a reason to regret this. Now Anakin sat in what they called a conference room, though it felt more like an interrogation chamber dressed up with comfortable chairs. One entire wall was transparent, offering a view of the city sprawling below. New York, they'd called it. 8 million people in a single urban center, more than most planets in the outer rim. The scale was staggering. Across the table sat Fury, Stark, Rogers, the woman they'd introduced as Natasha Romanoff, and the scientist Bruce Banner. Also present via holographic projection, technology almost as good as Republic holoprojectors, was an older man in a wheelchair who'd been introduced as Professor Charles Xavier. Let's start simple, Fury said, his fingers steepled on the table. What's the last thing you remember before arriving here? Anakin had spent the last 2 hours answering questions, submitting to scans that tickled against his Force sense, and trying to understand the basic framework of this universe. Now he was tired, worried about Ahsoka and Obi-Wan wondering what happened to him, and running low on patience. But he also recognized the position he was in. Stranded, alone, dependent on these people's goodwill. So he took a breath and answered again. I was in a starfighter engagement above Christophsis. The Separatists, think of them as a rebellious faction using droid armies, were attempting to break our blockade. I pursued an enemy fighter into a debris field and then space itself tore open. I was pulled through before I could react. Debris field in space, Banner muttered, making notes on a datapad. The energy readings from your fighter's wreckage suggest exposure to exotic particles we can't even classify. Whatever pulled you through operated on principles so far beyond our physics that, he trailed off, shaking his head. Dr. Banner is one of the world's foremost experts on radiation and particle physics, Xavier's hologram explained, his voice gentle and measured. If he says the readings are unprecedented, take that seriously. Young man, I wonder if I might ask about this force you mentioned. The energy you manipulate. Anakin felt Xavier's presence brush against his mind, subtle, polite, but unmistakably telepathic. It was different from force-based telepathy, more focused and precise. He raised his mental shields instinctively. Please don't do that, Anakin said quietly. It's considered extremely rude where I'm from, invasive. Xavier's hologram looked genuinely apologetic. My sincere apologies. I meant no offense. I'm simply trying to understand the nature of your abilities. We have individuals on Earth with what we call mutations. genetic variations that grant extraordinary capabilities. Your powers superficially resemble telekinesis and precognition that I've observed in mutants, but the underlying mechanism seems entirely different. Because it is different, Anakin said. The Force isn't a mutation or a genetic quirk. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, penetrates us, binds the galaxy together. Some people are sensitive to it, can feel it and manipulate it. I'm one of them. An energy field created by life itself, Banner repeated, his eyes bright with scientific curiosity. That's remarkable. It would explain why our instruments can detect your abilities' effects but can't pin down the mechanism. We're looking for a technological or biological explanation when it's something else entirely. Something metaphysical, Stark said, though his tone was skeptical. Magic by another name. Not magic, Anakin corrected. The Force has rules, limitations. It's not about wishing things into existence. It's about understanding the connections between things, feeling the flow of energy through living beings, and working with that flow rather than against it. Demonstrate, Fury ordered, not asked. Anakin considered refusing on principle. He wasn't a performing monkey, but decided cooperation would serve him better. He held out his hand, and one of the data pads on the table lifted smoothly into the air, floating to his palm. Then he released it, letting it drift back to its original position. Telekinesis, Romanoff observed. We've seen that before. Can you read minds? Xavier asked, his interest clearly piqued. To a degree. Surface thoughts, emotions, intentions. It's easier with some species than others. I can also influence weak minds, suggest thoughts that weren't there before. Mind control, Fury said flatly. That's a hard line for us. Use that on anyone without explicit permission, and we're done being friendly. I'm not in the habit of controlling people, Anakin replied, feeling a flash of irritation. The Jedi Code forbids it except in extreme circumstances. We're peacekeepers, not tyrants. The Jedi Code, Rogers repeated. You've mentioned that a few times. It's a philosophy, a set of rules. This was easier ground. Anakin had explained Jedi philosophy to civilians and politicians across the Republic countless times. Both. The Code teaches us to value peace over violence, knowledge over ignorance, serenity over passion. We're supposed to be guardians of justice and order in the Republic, resolving conflicts without resorting to war when possible. And yet you mentioned being in a war, Romanoff pointed out. The Clone Wars. Anakin's expression darkened. Not by choice. The Separatists struck first, and we defend the Republic. Sometimes peace requires fighting those who would destroy it. A soldier's paradox, Rogers said quietly. I understand that better than you might think. Something in Rogers' tone suggested deep personal experience. Anakin studied the man more carefully through the Force. There was a strength to him, a core of unwavering conviction but also sorrow, loss, the kind that came from war. You fought, Anakin said. It wasn't a question. World War II, Rogers confirmed. I was frozen for 70 years, woke up in a world I barely recognized. So I understand what it feels like to be displaced, Skywalker, to lose everything familiar. The sympathy in Rogers' voice was genuine, and Anakin felt some of his defensive walls lower. How did you cope? Found something to fight for in the here and now. Found people who needed help, made new connections while honoring the old ones. Rogers paused. It wasn't easy, still isn't, but it's possible to build a new life without forgetting the old one. "I don't want a new life," Anakin said, perhaps more forcefully than he intended. "I want to go home. I have responsibilities, people depending on me. My wife." He cut himself off, but the slip was already made. Fury's eye narrowed. "Wife? I thought you said you were part of a peacekeeping order. Most of those don't allow marriage." Damn, the Jedi prohibition on attachment wasn't something Anakin wanted to explain, and his relationship with Padme was classified. "It's complicated." "Uncomplicate it," Fury ordered. "No," Anakin met Fury's gaze steadily. "My personal relationships are my business. I've cooperated with your questions about my abilities and my origin. My private life stays private." The room went silent. Romanoff's hand drifted toward her weapon. Banner tensed. Even through the hologram, Anakin could feel Xavier's concern. Only Rogers and Stark seemed unsurprised by the confrontation. Fury leaned back in his chair, studying Anakin for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, a small, grim expression that didn't reach his eye. "Fair enough. A man's entitled to his secrets long as they don't threaten my planet. But understand this, Skywalker. You're stranded here with no way home that we can see. That makes you either an asset or a liability. Which one depends entirely on the choices you make." "I'm neither," Anakin said. "I'm a person trying to survive in a situation I didn't ask for. Point me toward people who need help and I'll help them. That's what Jedi do. But I won't be controlled, manipulated, or turned into anyone's weapon." "Even if we could help you get home?" Stark asked, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. "Because I've been thinking about your dimensional rift problem. It's not impossible, just incredibly difficult. The kind of difficult that requires resources, expertise, and time. The kind of resources SHIELD has access to." There it was, the leverage play, "Help us and we'll help you." Anakin had expected it. He'd seen enough politics in the Republic to recognize a bargaining position, but it still rankled. "I'll help people who need it because that's who I am," Anakin said carefully. "Not because of threats or bribes. If you can truly help me get home, I'll appreciate it. But I'm not signing any contracts or swearing any oaths until I understand this world better." "Reasonable," Xavier's hologram said, speaking for the first time in several minutes. "Director Fury, might I make a suggestion? Young Mr. Skywalker needs time to acclimate, to understand our world and culture. Keeping him confined to SHIELD facilities will only breed resentment. Perhaps a guide, someone to help him navigate Earth's complexities." "You volunteering, Professor?" Fury asked. "Actually, I was thinking of someone younger, someone who might relate better to an individual displaced from everything familiar." Xavier's hologram turned to face someone off-screen. "Would you come in, please?" The door to the conference room opened, and a young man entered. Anakin's first impression was of barely controlled energy. The kid practically vibrated with nervous excitement. He couldn't have been more than 16 or 17, wearing casual clothes and a jacket that seemed out of place in this military facility. "This is Peter Parker," Xavier introduced. "One of New York's local heroes. He goes by Spider-Man." "Spider-Man," Anakin repeated, looking at the skinny teenager. "You." Peter's face flushed. I know, doesn't look like much without the suit. But I've been doing this for a while now, and Professor X thought maybe I could show you around the city, help you get oriented. I mean, if you want. No pressure. It's totally cool if you'd rather." "Peter," Rogers interrupted gently. "Breathe." The kid took a breath, and Anakin felt a smile tugging at his lips despite himself. There was something refreshing about Peter's unguarded enthusiasm after hours of careful political maneuvering. Through the Force, Anakin could sense the young man's genuine good nature, his desire to help, and interestingly, absolutely no fear of Anakin despite everything that had happened. "You were there," Anakin realized. "During the battle, I felt you in the area." "Yeah, yes. I was on patrol when everything went down. Saw your ship come through. That was insane, by the way, like something out of Star Wars. And then you jumped out and started deflecting energy blasts with a laser sword, and I was like, okay, today officially can't get weirder. But then the Hulk showed up and..." "Peter," Romanoff said, but there was amusement in her voice. "Try to keep the fanboying to a minimum." "Right, sorry, professional, got it." Peter straightened up, trying to look serious and failing completely. "Mr. Skywalker, sir, I'd be happy to show you around if you're interested. Fair warning, I talk a lot, I make terrible jokes, and I have a tendency to get into trouble. But I know this city better than almost anyone, and I'm pretty good at the whole helping people thing." Anakin looked at Fury. "I'm not a prisoner." "You're a person of interest," Fury corrected. "Big difference. You helped save lives today. That buys you goodwill. But there will be SHIELD agents keeping an eye on you, and if you step out of line..." "You'll know about it," Anakin finished. "I understand. Fine, Peter is it. I'd appreciate a guide who isn't trying to recruit, study, or control me." "Oh, I'm definitely going to study you," Peter said cheerfully. "But like, in a friendly, how do you do that Force thing way, not a strap you to a table and run tests way. Totally different vibe." Despite everything, the displacement, the uncertainty, the frustration with his situation, Anakin laughed. It felt good, a release of tension he hadn't realized he was carrying. "All right, Spider-Man, show me your city." New York from street level was overwhelming in ways that space battles never were. The sheer density of people, vehicles, buildings, all pressed together in organized chaos. Anakin had grown up on Tatooine, where you could see to the horizon in every direction. Even Coruscant, massive as it was, had distinct levels and structures. This was different. Organic chaos constrained by geometric grids. Peter swung through the city using some kind of adhesive webbing he could shoot from his wrists. A mutation, he'd explained, from a radioactive spider bite. It defied everything Anakin knew about biology, but he'd learned to accept that this universe operated on different rules. Anakin followed using the Force, leaping from rooftop to rooftop with augmented jumps, occasionally using telekinesis to adjust his trajectory midair. It felt good to move, to do something physical after hours of sitting and talking. "Okay, that's just showing off," Peter called out, watching Anakin execute a Force-assisted flip that carried him 30 meters across a gap between buildings. "How do you even do that without any tech?" "The Force enhances my physical abilities," Anakin explained, landing beside Peter on a rooftop overlooking what Peter had called Times Square. "Lets me jump higher, move faster, react quicker. It's not unlimited. I can still get tired, still get hurt, but it gives me an edge." "Like my spider powers," Peter said, nodding. "I'm strong enough to lift cars, fast enough to dodge bullets, and these webs let me swing around the city. Plus the spider sense, this tingly feeling I get when danger's coming. Is that kind of like your Force precognition?" "Probably similar," Anakin admitted. "I sense disturbances in the Force, especially threats. It's like knowing where a punch is going to land before it's thrown." "Must be nice. My spider sense just says danger, without being super specific about what kind." Peter sat on the ledge, legs dangling over a 50-story drop with casual disregard. So, stupid question maybe, but are there actual Jedi temples in your galaxy? Like with the robes and meditation and training younglings? The Jedi Temple on Coruscant is one of the largest structures on the planet, Anakin said, sitting beside Peter. Thousands of Jedi, archives containing knowledge from across the galaxy, training halls, meditation chambers. I grew up there from the time I was 9 years old. Wait, 9? They recruited you when you were a kid. Jedi training usually starts much younger. Infants typically identified through midi-chlorian testing. I was an exception, too old according to the council, too much attachment to my mother. Peter was quiet for a moment. Did you get to see her, your mom? Once, Anakin said, his voice going flat. Years later, I sensed she was in danger when I rescued her. I was too late. I'm sorry, Peter said softly. I lost my uncle. He was like a father to me, the person who taught me about responsibility, about using my powers for good. And when he died, it was because I didn't act when I should have. I could have stopped the guy who killed him, and I just didn't. There was a weight to Peter's words, a guilt that Anakin recognized. He'd carried similar burdens, every soldier lost under his command, every civilian he couldn't save, every mission that went wrong despite his best efforts. Your uncle sounds like he was a good man, Anakin said. The best. He used to say that with great power comes great responsibility. It's cheesy, I know, but it stuck with me. It's why I do this, you know, the costume, the patrols, helping people, because I can, so I should. The Jedi Code teaches something similar, Anakin admitted, that we should serve others, not ourselves, that our abilities are gifts meant to be used for the greater good. But, Peter prompted, clearly hearing the hesitation in Anakin's voice. But sometimes the code feels too restrictive, too focused on denying emotion, on avoiding attachment. We're supposed to be compassionate but not love, peaceful but not passive, powerful but not prideful. It's a lot of contradictions to balance. Sounds like being a superhero, Peter said. We're supposed to save people but respect the law, work with authorities but stay independent, be symbols of hope without letting the fame go to our heads. Nobody bats 1,000 on that stuff. We just try to do better than we did yesterday. It was such a simple philosophy, delivered without pretension or self-importance. Anakin found himself liking this kid more by the minute. How long have you been doing this? Anakin asked. Being Spider-Man. Couple years now. Started when I was 15, right after I got my powers. Made a lot of mistakes at first, still do, honestly, but I'm learning. The Avengers have been good mentors, and Professor X has helped me understand the responsibility that comes with being different. The Avengers, that's the group from today. Yeah, well, some of them. Iron Man, that's Tony Stark, the guy in the armor. He's like the tech genius billionaire. Captain America is Steve Rogers, basically a living legend from World War II. Black Widow is Natasha Romanoff, super spy extraordinaire. And the Hulk is Bruce Banner when he gets angry. There are others too. Thor, who's literally a Norse god, Hawkeye, who never misses with a bow, and they're trying to bring in more people now that threats are getting bigger. And they all work together, despite such different abilities and backgrounds. Most of the time, Peter said with a grin. They argue a lot, Stark and Rogers especially, total personality clash, but when it matters, they've got each other's backs. That's what being a team means. Anakin thought of Ahsoka, of Obi-Wan, of the clone troopers who'd followed him through countless battles. He missed them with a physical ache. I had a team, he said quietly. "A Padawan, an apprentice named Ahsoka, and my master Obi-Wan Kenobi. They're probably wondering what happened to me right now. Probably think I'm dead." Peter put a hand on Anakin's shoulder, the gesture surprisingly mature for someone so young. "We'll figure out how to get you home, man. Stark's already working on it, and he's like stupidly smart. Plus Doctor Strange, another hero, deals with magic and dimensions. He might be able to help once we track him down. You won't be stuck here forever." "You sound certain." "I'm an optimist, it's kind of my thing." Peter stood up, offering Anakin his hand. "Come on, I want to show you something." The robbery scene was chaos contained in a single city block. 3 men in masks and tactical gear held a jewelry store, their weapons far more advanced than anything Anakin would have expected street criminals to possess. Energy signatures that reminded him of blaster technology, but cruder, more volatile. Through the Force, Anakin sensed 12 hostages inside, terrified but unharmed. The criminals were nervous, desperate, dangerous combination. Outside, police had established a perimeter, their projectile weapons trained on the entrance. "Spider-Man," one of the officers called out as Peter swung down. "We've got civilians inside. SWAT's mobilizing, but who's that with you?" "New hero in town," Peter called back. "He's with me. What's the situation?" 3 suspects, unknown weapons. They hit 2 other stores in the last hour, always vanishing before we can respond. This time we got here fast enough to trap them, but now they've got hostages." Anakin studied the building through the Force, mapping its interior, sensing the positions of everyone inside. The criminals had the hostages clustered in the back, using them as shields against potential assault. Standard tactical positioning, but it left gaps. "There's a skylight," Anakin said, pointing to the roof. 2 of them are watching the doors. The 3rd is with the hostages. We go in from above, I disable the 2 guards while you secure the 3rd. Fast and quiet." Peter looked at him with surprise. "You got all that just by looking at the building?" "I can sense their positions through the Force, feel their emotions, their intentions. It's like a map in my mind." "Okay, that's officially the coolest power ever," Peter said. "Let's do it." They moved to the roof, Peter's web-slinging and Anakin's Force-enhanced jumps getting them into position within seconds. The skylight was old, reinforced glass, but nothing that would stop a lightsaber. Anakin ignited his blade, the blue plasma casting flickering light across the rooftop. In one smooth motion, he cut a circular opening large enough for them to drop through. The glass fell inward with barely a whisper, cushioned by the Force so it wouldn't alert the criminals below. They dropped simultaneously. Anakin landed in a crouch between the 2 criminals watching the front entrance, his lightsaber moving in a precise arc that sliced through their weapons before they could react. The energy cells detonated in a shower of sparks, making both men stumble backward in shock. A Force push slammed them against the wall with enough force to knock them unconscious, but not cause serious injury. The entire engagement lasted perhaps 2 seconds. Peter, meanwhile, had webbed the 3rd criminal to the ceiling, the man's weapon secured to the wall 15 feet away before he even realized what was happening. "Everybody out," Peter shouted to the hostages. "Go, go, go." The civilians ran for the exit, some crying, others too shocked to speak. Anakin sensed their relief, their gratitude, the way their fear dissipated as they realized they were safe. This was what being a Jedi meant, not politics or protocol or following rules that didn't make sense, protecting people, saving lives. That was incredible, Peter said, checking to make sure the criminals were secure. You made it look so easy. You weren't exactly slow yourself, Anakin replied, deactivating his lightsaber. That webbing is remarkably effective. Thanks, I've been working on the formula for. The Force screamed a warning. Anakin spun, lightsaber reigniting, just as reality itself seemed to shimmer near the back of the store. A portal opened, different from the rift that had brought him here, more controlled, deliberate. Through it stepped a figure in green and gold armor, a horned helmet obscuring his features. The moment the figure emerged, Anakin felt something wrong in the Force. Not dark side corruption, but trickery, illusion, a fundamental dishonesty to the being's presence. Like trying to look at something that refused to be seen clearly. Well, the figure said, his voice smooth and cultured with an accent Anakin didn't recognize. The rumors were true. A Jedi here on Midgard. How delightfully unexpected. Loki, Peter said, his entire body tensing. What are you doing here? Loki. Anakin kept his blade between them, assessing the threat. Through the Force, he sensed vast power in the armored figure. Not as raw as some Sith lords he'd encountered, but subtle, complex, layered with deception. Loki Lofison, the figure said with a mocking bow. God of mischief, rightful king of Asgard, and currently very interested in you, Jedi. Your arrival sent ripples through the dimensional fabric that even I could sense. Quite the impressive entrance. If you're here for a fight, Peter started, but Loki waved a dismissive hand. Please, Spider, I'm not here for crude violence. I'm here because this man represents something fascinating. A doorway, perhaps, a bridge to other realities. Loki's eyes, visible through his helmet, fixed on Anakin with unsettling intensity. Tell me, Jedi, in your universe, what do you know of the Infinity Stones? I don't know what those are, Anakin said carefully, not lowering his blade. Of course you don't. Different universe, different cosmic artifacts, but the principle remains objects of immense power scattered across reality, waiting to be claimed by those with the vision to use them. Loki circled slowly, and Anakin turned to keep him in view. You wield power from another dimension, the Force you call it. I wonder what would happen if one were to study that power, understand its mechanics, perhaps even replicate it. The Force isn't something you can steal or copy, Anakin said. It's not technology. Everything can be understood, Jedi. Everything can be exploited. Loki's smile was sharp. But I'm not here to fight you. Not yet. I'm simply introducing myself, letting you know that you're being watched, that your presence here has attracted attention from forces far beyond SHIELD's comprehension. Get to your point, Anakin said, his patience wearing thin. My point is this. You're alone in a universe that doesn't understand you, wielding powers that terrify the small-minded, desperate to return to a home that may be unreachable. I could help you. My knowledge of dimensional magic is considerable. I could open pathways, create bridges between realities. In exchange for what? Merely your cooperation in a small matter, a demonstration of your abilities for my research. Harmless, really. Peter shot a web at Loki, but it passed through the figure harmlessly. An illusion. The real Loki's voice came from behind them. Think about my offer, Jedi. SHIELD will study you, the Avengers will try to recruit you, but I can give you what you truly want. A way home. Another portal opened, and Loki stepped through. Before it closed, his voice echoed back, "We'll speak again soon." The portal vanished, leaving Anakin and Peter alone in the ransacked jewelry store with 3 unconscious criminals and a dozen questions. Please tell me you're not actually considering his offer, Peter said. Of course not, Anakin replied, though doubt gnawed at him. He's clearly trying to manipulate me. Yeah, manipulation is kind of Loki's whole thing. He's a trickster god from another realm, Asgard. Thor's brother, actually, though they don't exactly get along. Loki's tried to conquer Earth a couple times, caused all kinds of chaos. You can't trust anything he says. But even as Peter spoke, Anakin couldn't shake the temptation. What if Loki could actually help him? What if refusing the offer meant staying trapped here forever, never seeing Padme again, abandoning his duties to the Republic? No, he'd seen enough Sith and Darksiders to recognize a corruption attempt when he saw one. Loki was playing on his fears, his desperation. Classic manipulation. We should report this to SHIELD, Anakin said finally. Already done, Peter replied, tapping the device on his wrist. Sent an alert the moment Loki showed up. They're going to want a full debrief. The debrief took place back at the Triskelion, this time with even more people in attendance. In addition to the usual suspects, there was now a man dressed in red armor with a flowing cape. Tony Stark had introduced him as Thor, Loki's brother and the actual god of thunder. My brother approached you. Thor's voice was like distant thunder, deep and resonant. This is troubling. Loki rarely shows himself without purpose, and his interest in you, Anakin Skywalker, suggests he sees opportunity in your displacement. What kind of opportunity? Anakin asked. Chaos primarily, Natasha answered. Loki thrives on disorder. Your arrival disrupted the dimensional barriers, created instability. He'll want to exploit that, either to access other realities or to gain power from your Force abilities. Can he actually deliver on his promise? Anakin asked, adding how hopeful he sounded. Could he open a portal to my universe? The room went quiet. Finally, Bruce Banner spoke up. Theoretically, yes. Loki has access to Asgardian magic that operates on principles we don't fully understand. But even if he could open such a portal, there's no guarantee it would take you where you want to go. And the cost, whatever he's really after, would be catastrophic. He wants to study my abilities, Anakin said. That's what he said. Lie, Thor stated flatly. Or partial truth, which for Loki amounts to the same thing. He wants something more, something he's not revealing. Perhaps access to your dimension's resources, or knowledge of Force abilities he could weaponize. Fury leaned forward. Skywalker, I'm going to be blunt. You're a dimensional anomaly with powers we can't fully explain, stranded in a universe that isn't yours. That makes you vulnerable to exploitation. Loki is just the first. Others will come. Villains who see you as a weapon to acquire, governments who see you as a threat to contain, opportunists who see you as a tool to use. So what do you suggest? Anakin asked, trying to keep the frustration from his voice. You need allies, Steve Rogers said. Real allies, not manipulators or exploiters. People who will help you because it's right, not because they want something from you. The Avengers, Tony Stark clarified. We're not perfect and we argue constantly, but we protect our own. You want to get home, we'll help. You want to survive here in the meantime, we'll teach you how this world works, but you need to trust us. Anakin studied the faces around the table. Through the Force, he could sense their genuine concern, their willingness to help, but also their caution, their uncertainty about him. He was still an unknown variable, potentially dangerous. What would this alliance entail? Anakin asked carefully. Training, Steve said. You're powerful, but you don't know our world, our threats, our politics, our culture. You need to understand what you're dealing with. Assistance with your dimensional research, Bruce added. I've already started analyzing the energy signatures from your arrival. With SHIELD's resources and Tony's technology, we might be able to find a genuine way home for you. And in exchange, Anakin pressed. You help when we need it, Tony said simply. Another crisis like the AIM attack happens, you're there. Someone threatens innocent people, you defend them. Basically, you keep being a hero, which, from what Peter tells me, is what you do anyway. It was a fair deal. More than fair, really. But Anakin had learned to be suspicious of offers that seemed too good, especially from governments and organizations with their own agendas. I need time to think about it, Anakin said. Understandable, Fury replied. Take your time. But while you're thinking, consider this. Loki's attention means other threats will follow. You're a beacon now, attracting everyone who deals in dimensional magic, cosmic power, or reality manipulation. You need backup, whether you want to admit it or not. The meeting concluded shortly after, with agreements to reconvene in a few days. As Anakin left the conference room, Peter caught up to him in the hallway. Hey, I know that was a lot, Peter said. But for what it's worth, I think you can trust them. The Avengers, I mean. They've saved the world multiple times. I'm sure they have, Anakin said. But I've also seen how organizations use people, how they manipulate good intentions for political purposes. The Republic Senate does it constantly, and the Jedi Council isn't immune either. So you're going to refuse their help? I didn't say that. Anakin sighed, rubbing his temples. I just need to be careful. Every choice I make here could have consequences I can't predict. They walked through the facility in silence for a moment before Peter spoke again. Want to get out of here? I know a place that makes really good shawarma. We can talk somewhere that isn't a super spy headquarters. Anakin smiled despite himself. Shawarma. It's food, Middle Eastern wrap thing, absolutely delicious. Come on, my treat. The shawarma place was a small restaurant in Brooklyn, cramped and busy, but with an energy that reminded Anakin of the lower levels of Coruscant. Peter insisted on ordering for both of them, and Anakin had to admit the food was excellent. Spiced meat, fresh vegetables, some kind of yogurt sauce that complemented everything perfectly. So, Peter said around a mouthful of food, what are you going to do? About the Avengers, I'll probably accept. You're right that I need allies. Anakin took another bite, savoring flavors that were utterly foreign to his palate. About Loki, I'll ignore him. Nothing he offers is worth the price he's not mentioning. Smart dudes like the textbook definition of deal with the devil. Peter paused. What about the other thing? What other thing? Going home. Do you really think it's possible? Anakin was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, he admitted. Banner and Stark are brilliant, I can sense that, but the Force, it's telling me something. A disturbance like the universe itself is warning me that the path home might not exist, or if it does, it might not lead where I expect. The Force can see the future. Not exactly. It shows possibilities, warnings, potential paths, but the future is always in motion, changing based on the choices we make. Right now, all I sense is uncertainty and danger, though I can't tell what kind. Peter set down his shawarma, his expression serious. If you can't get home, hypothetically, would you stay here, on Earth? I don't have a choice, Anakin said. If there's no way back, then this is where I am. I'd make the best of it, find purpose, help people, maybe. He trailed off, not wanting to voice the hope that was forming. Maybe what? Maybe build something new. A new life, new connections. I wouldn't forget my old life. I could never do that, but I'd move forward. It's what Padme would want me to do. She sounds like a smart woman. The smartest I know. Anakin smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. She once told me that the greatest prison people live in is their fear of what other people think. That if I spent my whole life trying to please the Council, trying to be the perfect Jedi, I'd lose myself in the process. Wise and philosophical, definitely wife material. They finished their meal in comfortable silence, and Anakin felt something settle in his chest. A decision, or maybe just acceptance. He was here in this universe, and fighting against that reality wouldn't change it. Better to adapt, to learn, to find his place in this strange new world. As they left the restaurant, Anakin's danger sense flared. Not the Force exactly, but something similar. He grabbed Peter and pulled him aside just as a car exploded across the street, the blast wave shattering windows and sending debris flying. From the smoke emerged figures in powered armor, different from Stark's, cruder and more militaristic. Hydra symbols adorned their chests, and their weapons were already charging. Target acquired, one of them announced. The Jedi is isolated, all units converge. Seriously, Peter groaned, his hand already reaching for his web shooters. Can we have one day without someone trying to kill us? Anakin ignited his lightsaber, its blue blade cutting through the smoke. Apparently not. How many? Spider-Sense says, a lot, at least a dozen, maybe more. Through the Force, Anakin could feel them surrounding the block, cutting off escape routes. This wasn't a random attack. It was a coordinated assault, planned and executed with military precision. They want me alive, Anakin said, reading the intentions of the Hydra soldiers. Orders are to capture, not kill. That's good news, right? It means they'll use non-lethal weapons. Stun settings, nets, containment fields, harder to defend against than killing blows. Great, Peter muttered. So we've got a whole team of bad guys trying to kidnap you using sci-fi capture technology. Just another Wednesday in New York. The Hydra soldiers advanced from multiple directions, their weapons primed. Civilians screamed and ran, adding chaos to the situation. Anakin reached out through the Force, sensing the positions of everyone nearby, calculating angles and opportunities. Stay close, Anakin ordered. We fight back to back, protect each other's blind spots. Got it, and Anakin. Yeah. Try not to die on your first week here. I'd feel really bad about that. Despite everything, Anakin laughed. Then the Hydra soldiers opened fire and the battle began. The first stun bolt crackled through the air where Anakin's head had been a moment before. He'd already moved, the Force showing him the trajectory before the trigger was pulled. His lightsaber deflected 3 more bolts in rapid succession, sending them back toward their sources with surgical precision. 2 Hydra soldiers dropped, stunned by their own weapons. Peter launched himself upward, web lines carrying him above the immediate firing arc. Heads up, they've got aerial support incoming. Anakin sensed them before he saw them. Flying units equipped with repulsor technology similar to Stark's suit but bulkier, more heavily armed. They descended from above in a coordinated pattern, cutting off vertical escape routes. They've done their homework, Anakin muttered, analyzing the tactical situation. Hydra had studied his capabilities, knew about the Force-enhanced mobility that made him so dangerous in close quarters. They were trying to box him in, limit his options. Unfortunately for them, Anakin had fought far worse odds in the Clone Wars. He reached out through the Force, not at the soldiers themselves but at their equipment. The aerial units relied on repulsor technology, technology that required precise calibration and energy flow. Anakin might not understand the specific mechanics of Earth tech, but energy was energy, and circuits were circuits. With a focused effort, he disrupted the power couplings on the nearest aerial unit. The soldier's repulsors failed catastrophically. He dropped like a stone, managing to deploy an emergency parachute before hitting the ground but removing himself from the fight. Anakin did the same to two more aerial units, their systems sparking and dying under his force manipulation. "How are you doing that?" one of the Hydra commanders shouted, genuine confusion in his voice. "Our systems are imp-shielded." "Not magic," Anakin replied, deflecting another stun bolt. "Just the Force." Peter webbed 3 soldiers to a wall in quick succession, his enhanced reflexes letting him dodge return fire with acrobatic grace. "We can't keep this up forever. There's too many of them, and civilians are still in the blast radius." Anakin knew Peter was right. The longer this fight went on, the more likely innocent bystanders would get hurt. They needed to end this quickly and decisively. Through the Force, Anakin reached out to the largest concentration of Hydra soldiers, 8 of them positioned in a semicircle, their weapons creating a coordinated firing solution that would be nearly impossible to dodge or deflect simultaneously. He thrust both hands forward, channeling the Force into a massive push. The shockwave slammed into the soldiers like an invisible wall, sending them flying backward with enough force to dent the armored van behind them. Their weapons scattered, clattering uselessly across the pavement. "New plan," Anakin called to Peter. "I'll handle the ground forces. You get the civilians clear." "On it." Peter swung toward the nearby buildings, where terrified onlookers were trapped behind storefronts or huddled in doorways. His webs created barriers and escape routes, guiding people away from the combat zone with practiced efficiency. The Hydra commander, identifiable by his more elaborate armor and the way the other soldiers deferred to him, activated a communicator. "Target is proving more difficult than anticipated, deploying enhanced containment protocols." A new vehicle arrived, larger than the others. Its rear doors opened to reveal a massive device that hummed with restrained energy. Anakin's danger sense screamed a warning. "Magnetic containment field online," a technician announced, locking onto target's energy signature. The device fired, and Anakin felt something grab at his lightsaber, not physically but magnetically, trying to rip it from his grip. He deactivated the blade and clipped it to his belt, but the magnetic pull intensified, strong enough to drag him toward the device. They'd built a weapon specifically to counter his lightsaber. Clever. But they'd made one critical mistake. They assumed the weapon was what made him dangerous. Anakin stopped fighting the magnetic pull and instead used it, letting it accelerate him toward the device. At the last second, he used the Force to vault over the magnetic projector, landing behind the operators in a crouch. A sweep of his leg took out the first technician. A Force-enhanced punch disabled the second. He slammed his palm against the device's control panel, shorting it out with a focused burst of Force energy that overloaded its circuits. The magnetic field collapsed, and the device sparked before going dark. "Seriously," the Hydra commander sounded genuinely exasperated. "What does it take to contain this guy?" "More than you've got," Anakin replied, reigniting his lightsaber. The commander made a gesture and the remaining Hydra soldiers fell back, forming a defensive perimeter. But they weren't retreating, they were making space for something else. A figure stepped out of the largest transport vehicle. He was huge, easily matching the Hulk's height, but where Banner's alter ego was raw savage power, this man was controlled precision. Cybernetic enhancements covered half his body, metal and flesh merged in ways that made Anakin think of the war droids he'd fought, but with human intelligence behind the augmentations. Through the Force, Anakin sensed something deeply wrong with this person. Pain, yes, but also fractured memories, a mind that had been broken and rebuilt multiple times. This wasn't a willing soldier. This was a weapon someone had made from a person. Winter Soldier, the Hydra commander said with satisfaction. Eliminate resistance. Capture the target alive. The cyborg moved. Fast. Impossibly fast for something that size. Anakin barely got his lightsaber up in time to block the vibranium-enhanced punch that would have caved in his skull. The metal arm didn't cut when it contacted the plasma blade. Instead, it absorbed the energy, dispersing it across its surface. Vibranium alloy, Peter called out, having finished evacuating civilians. It's basically indestructible. Cap's shield is made of the same stuff. The Winter Soldier pressed his advantage, fighting with a style that spoke of decades of combat experience. Each movement was economical, efficient, designed to kill or incapacitate with minimal wasted effort. Anakin recognized the philosophy. It was similar to Form III lightsaber combat, prioritizing defense and counterattacks. But Anakin was a Form V practitioner, and he'd been trained by one of the best duelists in the Jedi Order. He gave ground, letting the Winter Soldier overextend, then struck. His lightsaber carved through the soldier's rifle, rendering it useless. A force push created distance, giving Anakin space to assess his opponent properly. The Winter Soldier showed no emotion, no reaction to losing his weapon. He simply drew a combat knife from his belt and advanced again. "I don't want to hurt you," Anakin said, meaning it. Through the Force, he could feel the layers of conditioning, the programming that suppressed this man's true self. "You're being controlled, used." "Mission parameters are clear," the Winter Soldier replied, his voice flat and emotionless. "Capture the target." He attacked again, the knife moving in patterns designed to force Anakin into defensive positions. Anakin could have killed him easily. A lightsaber strike to the chest, a force choke, a dozen other lethal techniques. But this wasn't an enemy. This was a victim. Instead, Anakin reached out through the Force, not to attack but to touch the Winter Soldier's mind. What he found there made him recoil in horror. Torture, conditioning, memories wiped and overwritten countless times. This man had been a hero once, Anakin sensed, someone brave and good. Hydra had taken that hero and turned him into a weapon, erasing everything that made him human. It was monstrous, evil in a way that made Anakin's anger flare hot and bright. "That's enough," Anakin said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute command. He caught the Winter Soldier's knife hand with the Force, freezing it in mid-strike. Then he reached deeper into the man's mind, past the conditioning, searching for the person buried underneath all that programming. There, a name, a memory, a flash of someone who mattered. "Bucky," Anakin said softly, "your name is Bucky Barnes." The Winter Soldier's eyes widened fractionally. For just a moment, something human flickered across his face, confusion, recognition, pain. Then the Hydra commander's voice cut through the moment. "Reactivate conditioning protocols. Don't let him break through." The Winter Soldier clutched his head, metal hand gripping hard enough to draw blood. He staggered backward, fighting some internal battle that Anakin could sense through the Force, the real person trying to surface, the programming trying to suppress it. "No," the Winter Soldier, Bucky gasped. I don't." "Fall back," the Hydra commander ordered. "We're not losing the asset." Smoke grenades deployed, filling the street with thick gray clouds. Anakin tried to pursue through the Force, tracking the Winter Soldier's position, but the Hydra forces had planned for this too. They deployed some kind of interference field that created static in his Force senses, making it difficult to pinpoint individuals. By the time the smoke cleared, the Hydra forces were gone. Only the disabled vehicles and unconscious soldiers remained. Peter landed beside Anakin, breathing hard. "Did you just break their mind control guy?" "I tried," Anakin said, frustrated. "I found the real person underneath the conditioning, someone named Bucky Barnes, but they pulled him out before I could fully reach him." "Bucky Barnes?" Peter's voice was sharp with surprise. "As in Sergeant James Buchanan Barnes, Captain America's best friend from World War II." "I don't know the history," Anakin admitted. "I just know what I sensed, a good man turned into a weapon against his will." "If it's really Bucky Barnes, Steve is going to lose his mind. Bucky was his partner, his closest friend. Everyone thought he died in the war 70 years ago." Sirens approached, police, emergency services, probably SHIELD as well. Anakin could sense multiple aircraft converging on their position. "We need to report this," Peter said. "Hydra specifically targeting you, the Winter Soldier showing up. This is way bigger than a random attack." Anakin knew Peter was right, but frustration gnawed at him. Every time he started to get his bearings in this universe, something new and dangerous appeared. First the dimensional crash, then Loki's manipulation attempt, now Hydra trying to capture him. He was a target, a prize to be claimed by anyone with the resources and ambition to try. And he was tired of being reactive. "We report it," Anakin agreed. "But then I need to train, need to understand this world's threats better. I can't keep being caught off guard." "The Avengers can help with that," Peter said. "Seriously, man, you should join up, at least temporarily. You need backup and they need someone with your abilities." Before Anakin could respond, multiple black vehicles arrived, SHIELD agents deploying with practiced efficiency. And from the lead vehicle stepped not just Director Fury, but Steve Rogers, still in his Captain America uniform from whatever mission he'd been on. Rogers took one look at the disabled Hydra vehicles, the unconscious soldiers, and the blast damage to the surrounding buildings. "Report." Peter filled him in quickly, detailing the coordinated attack and the appearance of the Winter Soldier. With each word, Rogers' expression grew darker, more troubled. When Peter mentioned the name Bucky Barnes, Rogers went completely still. "You're certain?" His voice was carefully controlled, but Anakin could sense the storm of emotions beneath: hope, pain, guilt, desperate need to believe. "I'm certain there's a person trapped underneath the conditioning," Anakin said. "A soldier who was conditioned to be someone else, someone loyal to Hydra and willing to kill on command. But when I touched his mind through the Force, I found memories, a name. Bucky Barnes seemed important to him." Rogers closed his eyes for a moment, his jaw clenched. When he opened them again, his gaze fixed on Anakin with an intensity that would have been intimidating if Anakin hadn't faced down Sith Lords. "Can you do it again? Can you reach him, break the conditioning?" Maybe, Anakin said honestly. I've never tried to undo that kind of mental manipulation before. The Jedi have techniques for it, but I'm not a specialist. And the programming seemed deep, layered. It would take time and proximity, neither of which we had. Then we find him, Rogers said with absolute conviction. We bring him in and you try. If there's any chance Bucky is still in there, still savable. Steve, Fury interrupted gently. We don't even know if this is really Barnes. Could be a trick, a setup by Hydra to manipulate you. It's him, Rogers said. I know it is. I've seen reports over the years, assassinations attributed to a Winter Soldier that matched Bucky's skill set. I wanted to believe he was dead, that he'd died a hero in the war. But if he's alive, if he's been suffering all this time. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Anakin understood completely. The guilt of leaving someone behind, of failing to save them. He'd felt it every time a clone trooper died under his command, every time he arrived too late to prevent a tragedy. We'll find him, Anakin said. It wasn't a promise. He knew better than to make promises he might not be able to keep, but it was a commitment. If I can help free him, I will. Rogers extended his hand. Then I'm officially asking you to join the Avengers. We need you, Anakin, and I think you need us too. Anakin looked at the offered hand, considering everything it represented. Alliance with Earth's heroes, commitment to their battles, their wars, their conflicts, getting involved in this universe's problems when he should be focused on finding a way home. But he thought of the Winter Soldier, Bucky, trapped in his own mind, used as a weapon against his will. He thought of the civilians Peter had evacuated, the lives saved today. He thought of Padmé's voice in his memory. The greatest prison people live in is their fear of what other people think. She'd want him to do the right thing, to help people who needed it, regardless of which universe they were in. Anakin clasped Roger's hand firmly. I'll join, but I have conditions. Name them, Roger said. First, I'm not a weapon or a tool. I'll help in fights, save lives, but I won't be deployed like a tactical asset. I make my own choices about when and how to engage. Agreed, Fury said immediately. We want allies, not drones. Second, you continue research into getting me home. I'll help here, but my ultimate goal is returning to my universe. I won't abandon that. Stark and Banner are already working on it, Fury confirmed. We'll dedicate resources to the effort. Third, and this was the important one, you don't try to control me or my abilities. No studies without my consent, no attempts to replicate force powers, no treating me like a specimen to be analyzed. That's reasonable, Rogers said. You're a person, not a science project. Tony Stark chose that moment to arrive, his Iron Man suit landing with a dramatic repulsor-assisted touchdown. The faceplate retracted, revealing his characteristic smirk. Did I miss the bonding moment? Please tell me I missed the bonding moment. Those are always awkward. He looked at Anakin and Rogers still clasped hands. Oh good, we're doing the team-building handshake thing. Love it. Very inspiring. Stark, Fury said with obvious patience, what are you doing here? Monitoring police frequencies, as one does. Heard about Hydra grabbing for our new Jedi friend and thought I'd check in. Stark's expression turned more serious. JARVIS analyzed the energy signatures from the Hydra attack. They were using tech we've never seen before. Dimensional stabilizers, reality anchors, exotic matter containment. This wasn't just a kidnapping attempt. They were trying to open something. Open what? Anakin asked. Best guess. A portal. using your unique energy signature as a key or beacon. They wanted you alive because you're the only person on Earth who's successfully crossed dimensional boundaries. You're proof it's possible, and Hydra wants to weaponize that. The implications hit Anakin like a physical blow. His presence here wasn't just attracting attention, it was potentially enabling Hydra to breach other dimensions, to access other realities for conquest or exploitation. They could reach my galaxy, Anakin said slowly. Use the connection I created when I came through. Exactly, Stark confirmed. Which means we need to shut down whatever dimensional research Hydra's conducting, and we need to do it fast, before they figure out how to stabilize the pathway. Do we have any leads on their research facilities? Rogers asked. Fury pulled up a holographic display from his wrist device. 3 possible locations based on intercepted communications and energy signatures, all heavily fortified, all likely to have significant defensive forces. Then we hit all 3 simultaneously, Rogers said, slipping into tactical command mode. Divide our forces, strike fast before they can relocate their research. That's going to require coordination with the full Avengers roster, Fury said. Thor's off-world dealing with Asgard business, but we've got Hawkeye, Romanoff, Banner, Stark, and now Skywalker. Plus, we can pull in some backup from the SHIELD strike teams. I can help too, Peter offered, but Rogers shook his head. This is going to be heavy combat, Peter. Military-grade opposition. I need you keeping New York safe while we're deployed. Peter looked disappointed but nodded. Keep him alive, okay? I just got a friend who understands the whole power and responsibility thing. I'd like to keep him around. Anakin smiled slightly. I'll do my best. The planning session that followed was intense and detailed. Anakin found himself impressed by the Avengers' tactical coordination. They might argue about philosophy and approach, but when it came to actual combat operations, they were consummate professionals. Rogers would lead the assault on the primary facility in Sokovia, taking Natasha and a SHIELD strike team. Stark would hit the secondary location in the Arctic, with remote-operated Iron Legion units backing him up. And Anakin would assault the third site, a repurposed military base in the Nevada desert, with Bruce Banner providing backup. You sure you want Banner with you? Stark asked Anakin privately. The big guy's effective, but he's not exactly subtle. I can sense his dual nature through the Force, Anakin replied. 2 minds sharing one body, the brilliant scientist and the rage-driven monster. But I don't sense evil in either of them, just pain and fear of losing control. That's surprisingly accurate, Stark admitted. Bruce is terrified of the Hulk, of what he becomes. It's why he rarely lets it out voluntarily. Then maybe having someone who understands that struggle will help, Anakin said. I know what it's like to fear your own power, to worry that one day you'll lose control and hurt the people you're trying to protect. Stark studied him for a moment. The dark side thing you mentioned before. Yes, it's always there waiting. Every time I use the Force in anger, every time I let fear or hatred guide me, I can feel it pulling at me. Promising power, offering shortcuts, whispering that the ends justify the means. How do you resist? By remembering what I'm fighting for, by staying connected to the people I care about, by choosing every single day to be the person I want to be rather than the person my worst impulses would make me. That's, Stark paused, his usual sarcasm absent. That's actually pretty profound. Jedi training, Anakin said with a slight smile. Underneath all the meditation and philosophy, it mostly boils down to don't be a jerk and try to help people. I can work with that. The briefing concluded with final tactical assignments and equipment checks. Anakin didn't need much. His lightsaber, his connection to the Force, and his wits had seen him through worse situations. But Stark insisted on providing him with a communications device and an emergency beacon. Just in case, Stark said. You get in over your head, you signal and we'll extract you. No heroic last stands necessary. I'll try to remember that, Anakin replied, though they both knew he probably wouldn't. Heroes didn't signal for extraction when lives were at stake. As the teams prepared to deploy, Rogers pulled Anakin aside one more time. Thank you, he said simply, for agreeing to help with Bucky, for joining the team. I know this isn't your fight, isn't even your universe. You could have stayed neutral, focused solely on getting home. Jedi don't stay neutral when people need help, Anakin replied. And honestly, fighting feels familiar, gives me purpose while I figure out the rest of this situation. Just don't lose yourself in the fighting, Rogers said quietly. I've seen good soldiers forget why they're fighting, turn into weapons instead of people. You're more than your abilities, Anakin. Don't forget that. It was advice Anakin had heard before from Obi-Wan, from Padme, from the Jedi Council. But hearing it from Rogers, from someone who clearly understood the weight of power and the burden of choice, made it resonate differently. I'll remember, Anakin promised. The transport aircraft lifted off 20 minutes later, carrying Anakin and Bruce Banner toward the Nevada facility. Through the Force, Anakin could sense the approaching confrontation, the danger that waited, but also opportunity, a chance to strike back at those who tried to capture him, to shut down Hydra's dimensional research before it could threaten his home galaxy. Banner sat across from him, reviewing tactical data on a tablet. You sure you're okay with this? He asked without looking up. Having the Hulk as backup, most people find the big green guy unsettling. I've fought alongside stranger beings, Anakin assured him. Clone soldiers designed in laboratories, Wookiees that could tear a droid apart barehanded, even a few sentient gas clouds. Size and appearance don't bother me. It's not the appearance people worry about, Banner said quietly. It's the loss of control. When I transform, I'm not fully there. The Hulk has his own mind, his own will. He usually fights the right targets, but usually isn't the same as always. You're afraid you'll hurt me. I'm afraid I'll hurt everyone, Banner corrected. It's why I spent years running, hiding, trying to cure myself of this condition. The power is useful, necessary sometimes, but the cost is fear, Anakin finished. Fear of what you might become, of losing control, of the monster inside winning. I understand that better than you might think. Banner finally looked up, his eyes sharp with intelligence and curiosity. The dark side, your version of losing control. Yes, except instead of turning into a rage monster, I become something worse, a Sith. Someone who uses the Force for domination, for power, who justifies cruelty and evil in the name of strength. I've seen what Sith become, Dr. Banner. I've fought them. And the terrifying part is that I understand the temptation. The dark side offers everything the light side demands you reject: passion, victory through strength, the power to reshape the world according to your will. But you don't give in. Not yet, Anakin said honestly. But every day is a choice. Every battle, every loss, every moment of fear or anger, they're all tests. And I don't know if I'll always pass. They sat in silence for a moment, two powerful beings contemplating the monsters they carried inside themselves. "We'll watch each other's backs," Banner said finally. "You keep me grounded, I'll keep you from going full Sith Lord. Deal?" Anakin smiled. Deal. The aircraft began its descent toward the Nevada facility, and through the Force, Anakin felt the first stirrings of something vast and terrible. Not just Hydra soldiers or defensive systems, but something else. Something that had been waiting in the darkness between dimensions, watching for an opportunity. And Anakin's arrival in this universe had given it exactly what it needed. But he didn't know that yet. All he knew was that the facility below held answers, held threats, and possibly held the key to understanding how he'd crossed dimensions in the first place. The mission was simple. Get in, destroy Hydra's dimensional research, get out. The execution, as always, would be considerably more complicated. The Hydra facility sprawled across the Nevada desert like a metallic cancer, camouflaged structures blending with the rocky terrain. From the air, it looked abandoned, exactly what Hydra wanted observers to think. But through the Force, Anakin sensed hundreds of life forms below, sophisticated technology humming with barely contained energy, and something else. Something that made his skin crawl. A presence, dark, ancient, and utterly alien. "Energy signatures are off the charts," Banner reported, analyzing readings on his tablet. "Whatever they're doing down there, it's pulling massive amounts of power, enough to light up a small city." "Or open a dimensional portal," Anakin said grimly. The transport set down 2 kilometers from the facility's perimeter. Anakin and Banner disembarked, the desert heat hitting them like a physical force. Through his comlink, Anakin could hear the other teams checking in, Rogers encountering heavy resistance at the Sokovia facility, Stark engaging automated defenses in the Arctic. "This is it," Banner said, already stripping off his shirt in preparation for transformation. "You ready?" "Ready," Anakin confirmed, his hand resting on his lightsaber. They advanced across the desert, using rocky outcroppings for cover. Anakin's Force sense mapped the facility's defenses, automated turrets, patrol patterns, sensor grids designed to detect conventional infiltration. But they weren't prepared for someone who could sense their positions through the Force and disable technology with a thought. The first turret swiveled toward them. Anakin reached out through the Force and crushed its targeting systems before it could fire. The second and third turrets died similarly, sparking and dying as their circuits overloaded. "That never gets old," Banner muttered. They reached the facility's outer wall without triggering any alarms. Anakin studied the reinforced blast doors, feeling the locking mechanisms through the Force. Complex, but not impossible. "Stand back," he said, igniting his lightsaber. The blue blade carved through the door like it was made of flimsy instead of reinforced steel. Anakin cut a circular opening large enough to step through, and they entered the facility. Immediately, alarms blared. "So much for stealth," Banner said. "Stealth was always going to fail," Anakin replied, deflecting a blaster bolt from a security camera he'd missed. "They've been expecting me. Better to hit hard and fast." Hydra soldiers poured into the corridor, their weapons aimed and ready. Anakin's lightsaber became a whirling barrier of plasma, deflecting energy bolts with practiced ease. He advanced through their formation like a force of nature, each movement economical and devastating. A soldier rushed him with an electrified baton. Anakin sidestepped, used the Force to yank the weapon away, and delivered a palm strike that sent the soldier crashing into his companions. "Need any help?" Banner called from behind. "Not yet," Anakin replied, cutting through another soldier's weapon. "Save the Hulk for when we really need him." They fought through 3 corridors, Anakin's precognition and combat experience making him nearly untouchable. But he could sense the facility responding, channeling defenders toward them, preparing something big. Through his comlink, Roger's voice crackled. "We've got a problem in Sokovia. They're using some kind of reality-warping tech. The architecture keeps changing and we're seeing duplicates, false versions of ourselves." "Illusions?" Anakin asked, using the Force to slam 3 soldiers into a wall. "More than illusions. They can fight, bleed, some kind of dimensional echo effect." "Hold position," Fury's voice cut in. "Stark, what's your status?" "Arctic base is a decoy," Stark reported, frustration evident. "Minimal defenses, no research equipment. They wanted us to split up." The realization hit Anakin like ice water. It's a trap. They're concentrating their real forces here. As if to confirm his words, blast doors sealed behind them, cutting off their retreat. Ahead, a massive chamber opened up, and Anakin felt his danger sense explode with warning. The chamber was a nightmare of alien geometry and corrupted technology. At its center, a swirling portal hung suspended in midair. But unlike the rift that had brought Anakin here, this one was wrong. Reality itself seemed to recoil from it, space-time buckling around its edges. And standing before the portal was a figure that made Anakin's blood run cold. It was humanoid in shape, but that was where resemblance to anything human ended. Its body seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, shifting and flickering as Anakin watched. Where eyes should be, there were voids that pulled at his consciousness, threatening to drag his mind into infinite darkness. Through the Force, Anakin sensed its nature immediately. This wasn't a being from his universe or the Marvel universe. This was something from between dimensions, from the spaces where reality grew thin and strange laws held sway. "Dormammu," the entity spoke, its voice resonating across frequencies that shouldn't exist. "Lord of the Dark Dimension, and you little Jedi are exactly what I've been waiting for." "Banner," Anakin said quietly, not taking his eyes off the entity, "now would be a good time." "Already on it," Banner replied, and Anakin heard the transformation beginning, bones cracking, muscles expanding, rage building like a rising storm. Dormammu laughed, a sound that made the air itself vibrate painfully. "The green beast, how quaint. But I've studied this dimension's defenders, learned their limitations. You cannot fight what exists outside your reality's rules." Hydra soldiers emerged from side passages, but these weren't ordinary troops. Their eyes glowed with the same void darkness as Dormammu's, their movements too precise, too coordinated. Possessed, Anakin realized. Puppets controlled by the dimensional entity. The Hulk roared, a sound of pure rage that shook the entire chamber. He charged at the possessed soldiers, his massive fists reducing them to broken flesh and shattered armor. But for every one he destroyed, 2 more emerged from the portal, their bodies assembled from dark matter and corrupted energy. "You cannot win, Jedi," Dormammu said, drifting closer. "Your arrival weakened the dimensional barriers. Your force, that exotic energy from a universe far from this one, it calls to the spaces between realities. It opened a path for me." "I didn't open anything," Anakin shot back, his lightsaber raised defensively. "Not intentionally, but your very presence is a tear in the fabric, a wound that bleeds across dimensions, and I am the infection that has found its way through." Dormammu gestured and reality twisted. The floor became the ceiling, gravity reversed, and Anakin found himself falling upward. He used the Force to arrest his momentum, but the dimensional distortion made it difficult, like trying to swim through syrup. The entity attacked with tendrils of pure darkness that moved through multiple dimensions simultaneously. Anakin's lightsaber cut through some of them, but others bypassed three-dimensional space entirely, striking from angles that shouldn't exist. Pain lanced through Anakin's side as one tendril connected. It wasn't physical damage, it was deeper, attacking his connection to the Force itself, trying to corrupt the energy that flowed through him. And with that corruption came temptation. Power flooded through Anakin as the dark tendril connected, showing him possibilities. He could access dimensions beyond counting, draw on energies that made the Force seem like a candle compared to a sun. He could reshape reality, return home, save everyone he'd ever failed to save. All he had to do was accept Dormammu's offer. All he had to do was let go of his principles, embrace the darkness, become a conduit for the entity's power. It was the dark side all over again, but magnified 1,000-fold. "No," Anakin gasped, using every technique the Jedi had taught him to resist. He thought of Padme, of Ahsoka, of Obi-Wan. He thought of Peter's simple philosophy about responsibility. He thought of Roger's warning about becoming a weapon instead of a person. He was Anakin Skywalker. He was a Jedi Knight, and he did not surrender to darkness. Anakin channeled the Force into the connection, pushing back against Dormammu's corruption with pure light side energy. It was like trying to hold back an ocean with his bare hands, but he didn't need to win. He just needed to resist long enough. "Impressive," Dormammu acknowledged. "Your will is stronger than I anticipated, but will alone cannot save you." The entity intensified its assault, and Anakin felt his defenses crumbling. He needed help, The Hulk's roar shook reality itself. The Green Giant had fought his way through the possessed soldiers, and now launched himself at Dormammu with single-minded fury. Dimensional entity or not, the Hulk didn't care about impossible physics or reality-warping powers. He only understood smashing. His fist connected with Dormammu's form, and something impossible happened. The entity staggered. "What?" Dormammu's surprise was evident. "You shouldn't be able to touch me. I exist outside your dimensional framework." But the Hulk didn't care about dimensional frameworks. His rage was so pure, so absolute, that it somehow transcended normal physical laws. Where Banner's intelligence would have been paralyzed by the impossibility of fighting a transdimensional being, the Hulk simply hit it until it worked. "Hulk smash Magic Ghost Man," the Green Giant bellowed, delivering another reality-shaking punch. Anakin used the distraction to free himself from Dormammu's tendril, severing the connection with his lightsaber. Pain lanced through him as the corruption was cut away, but he'd survived worse. Through the Force, he sensed the portal's structure, understanding its configuration. It was anchored by 4 crystalline structures positioned around the chamber's perimeter, each one resonating with dimensional energy. Destroy those anchors and the portal would collapse. "Hulk," Anakin shouted, "the crystals, destroy them." The Hulk, mid-punch, paused just long enough to follow Anakin's pointing finger. Then he grinned, a terrifying expression on that massive green face, and changed targets. The first crystal shattered under the Hulk's fist, exotic energies dissipating into the air. Dormammu shrieked, his form becoming less stable, flickering between dimensions more rapidly. "No, you cannot." Anakin reached out through the Force and crushed the second crystal himself, using telekinesis to compress it until its structure failed catastrophically. The portal wavered, its edges becoming ragged. Dormammu lashed out desperately, tendrils of darkness seeking to kill Anakin before he could destroy more anchors. But Anakin was ready this time. His lightsaber wove a defensive pattern that Form V had perfected over millennia, each strike deflecting or severing the attacks. The third crystal fell to the Hulk's rampage. Dormammu's form began to dissolve, pulled back toward his native dimension. "This isn't over, Jedi," the entity howled. "You've made an enemy of forces beyond your comprehension. I will return, and when I do..." Anakin destroyed the fourth crystal with a force-enhanced throw of his lightsaber, the plasma blade spinning through the air to slice the anchor in half. The portal collapsed with a sound like reality screaming. Dormammu's form was sucked backward into the dimensional vortex, his threats cut off as the gateway sealed itself. The possessed soldiers dropped like puppets with cut strings, the dark energy animating them dispersing. Silence filled the chamber, broken only by the Hulk's heavy breathing and the crackle of damaged equipment. Anakin retrieved his lightsaber, his hand shaking slightly from the effort of resisting Dormammu's corruption. Through the Force, he could still feel echoes of the entity's presence, shadows of the power it had offered. And part of him, a part he hated, wished he'd accepted. The Hulk shrunk, transforming back into Bruce Banner. The scientist collapsed, naked and exhausted, his body covered in minor wounds that were already healing thanks to his enhanced physiology. "Did we win?" Banner asked weakly. "We survived," Anakin replied, which wasn't quite the same thing but would have to do. His comlink crackled. "Skywalker Banner report." Fury's voice was sharp with concern. "Facility neutralized," Anakin said. "Dimensional entity called itself Dormammu was using Hydra's equipment to breach into this universe. We destroyed the portal anchors and sent it back to wherever it came from." "Dormammu," a new voice said over the comm, cultured and concerned. "This is Dr. Stephen Strange. I've been monitoring dimensional disturbances. Dormammu is one of the most dangerous entities in the multiverse, a being of pure dark magic who seeks to consume all realities into his dark dimension. If he managed to establish even a temporary foothold in our universe..." "He didn't," Anakin assured the voice. "The portal's destroyed, but he said something before we banished him, that my presence here, my connection to the Force, weakened the dimensional barriers, made it easier for him to cross over." Silence on the comm for a moment. Then Strange spoke again. "That would make sense, unfortunately. Your arrival created a resonance pattern, a vibrational frequency that entities like Dormammu could track. You're a beacon, Mr. Skywalker, advertising that dimensional travel is possible. So I'm making Earth a target." "You're making Earth aware of threats that already existed," Strange corrected. "Dormammu has sought to breach our dimension for millennia. Your presence simply provided him a new avenue of approach. But now that we know he's actively trying to enter our reality, we can prepare better defenses." "We need to meet," Anakin said. "You deal with dimensional magic. I'm stuck here because of dimensional travel. Maybe between your expertise and my experience, we can figure out how to get me home without creating more security risks." "Agreed. I'll contact you through SHIELD channels once you've returned from the field. In the meantime, be careful. Dormammu will try again, and next time he'll be better prepared." The comm went silent, leaving Anakin and Banner alone in the ruined chamber. Around them, Hydra soldiers were beginning to wake up, confused and disoriented now that Dormammu's influence had lifted. "We should secure them," Banner said, pulling on the spare clothes he always carried, "and search the facility for any remaining research data." They spent the next hour doing exactly that. SHIELD teams arrived to take the Hydra personnel into custody and begin cataloging the technology. Anakin found research notes that made his blood run cold. Hydra hadn't been trying to open random portals. They'd been specifically searching for his home universe, planning to invade it using weapons and technology the Republic had never encountered. The Clone Wars were brutal enough. Adding Hydra's fanaticism and advanced weaponry to the Separatist side would have been catastrophic. Roger's team reported success in Sokovia, having fought through the reality distortions to destroy their facility. Stark confirmed the Arctic base was indeed a decoy, but he'd recovered intelligence suggesting 2 more hidden facilities that would need to be dealt with. By the time they extracted, Anakin was exhausted in ways that had nothing to do with physical fatigue. The battle with Dormammu had been different from anything he'd faced before, not a contest of martial skill or even force power, but a struggle of wills against a being that operated by fundamentally different rules. And he'd come dangerously close to losing. The flight back to New York gave him time to meditate, to examine the darkness Dormammu had touched inside him. The corruption was gone, burned away by light side energy, but the memory remained. The temptation remained. Power to reshape reality, power to return home instantly, power to save everyone. All for the low, low price of his soul. "You okay?" Banner asked quietly. They were alone in the rear compartment of the transport, the others giving them space to recover. "I was offered power," Anakin admitted. "By Dormammu before we banished him. Power to do everything I've ever wanted, go home, save people, end the war. All I had to do was let him in, let him corrupt my connection to the Force." "But you didn't." "No, but I wanted to. For a moment I seriously considered it." Anakin looked at his hands, remembering how they'd trembled while resisting. "That's what scares me. Not that the dark side offers power, but that part of me always wants to accept." Banner was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You know what I think about every time I transform, every time I feel the Hulk taking over?" "What?" "I think about how easy it would be to just let go, to surrender to the rage, stop fighting it, become the monster everyone fears. The Hulk is stronger when I'm not resisting, when I'm not trying to maintain control. Pure rage, undiluted by conscience or morality." "But you don't let go." "No, because the moment I do, I stop being Bruce Banner. I become just the Hulk, and the Hulk, for all his strength, isn't me. He's what I become when I abandon everything that makes me human." Banner met Anakin's eyes. "You resisted Dormammu because surrendering would have meant abandoning everything that makes you Anakin Skywalker. The power might have been yours, but you wouldn't have been you anymore. And that matters." The Jedi Council would say attachment to identity is itself a form of pride, Anakin said with a slight smile. "That I should be willing to sacrifice my ego for the greater good." "The Jedi Council sounds like they've never actually been tempted by real power," Banner replied. "It's easy to preach detachment when you're not the one standing at the precipice." They lapsed into companionable silence, 2 warriors who'd stared into their own darkness and chosen, once again, to step back from the edge. The Avengers compound was a marvel of modern architecture and technology, sprawling across several acres outside New York City. Anakin arrived to find the team assembled in what they called the common room, a large space with comfortable furniture and huge windows overlooking the grounds. Peter was there too, having apparently been invited to the debriefing despite not being an official Avenger. He waved excitedly when Anakin entered. "Dude, you fought a dimensional demon. That's like the coolest thing ever." "Dormammu," Doctor Strange corrected. He stood near one of the windows, a tall man with graying hair and an imperious bearing that reminded Anakin of some of the stuffier Jedi Masters. Not technically a demon, though the distinction is largely academic. "You're Strange?" Anakin asked. "Dr. Stephen Strange, master of the mystic arts and sorcerer supreme of this dimension." Strange extended a hand, and Anakin noticed the tremors in his fingers, old injuries, barely controlled. "I've been following your situation with great interest. A Force user from another universe represents unprecedented opportunities for research and potential catastrophic risks." "Which am I?" Anakin asked, shaking the offered hand. "Both, naturally, but right now I'm more concerned with the risks." Strange gestured, and golden light coalesced into complex geometric patterns, similar to Anakin's Force techniques but using completely different energy sources. "Your arrival created what we call a dimensional scar, a weak point in reality's fabric. Dormammu exploited that weakness, but he won't be the only one." Strange's magic formed an image, the universe represented as a sphere with a glowing crack across its surface. "Every moment you remain in this universe, the scar grows slightly worse. Not enough to threaten immediate catastrophe, but over time, years, perhaps decades, it could destabilize dimensional barriers entirely." "So I'm a long-term threat to your reality," Anakin said flatly. "Unless we can either heal the scar or return you to your proper universe, yes." Strange's expression softened slightly. "I'm not saying this to make you feel unwelcome. I'm saying it because you deserve to know the truth. Your presence here has consequences." "Can you send me home?" Anakin asked, trying to keep hope from his voice. "I don't know," Strange admitted. "My magic can open portals across dimensions, but navigating the multiverse is complex. There are infinite realities, infinite variations. Finding your specific universe among countless billions would require either remarkable luck or an extremely precise navigation method." "What about using my connection to the Force as a beacon?" Anakin suggested. "I'm tied to my universe's Force, to specific people and places there. Could you use that connection to trace the path back?" Strange considered this, his fingers moving through mystical calculations that left glowing symbols in the air. "It's possible, theoretically, but it would require me to forge a temporary link with your Force connection to see through your metaphysical ties to your home universe. That level of mental and spiritual connection could be dangerous," Anakin finished. "I understand, but if it's our best option—" "Let me study the problem further," Strange said. "Rushing into dimensional magic is how catastrophes happen. Give me time to prepare properly, to understand the risks." It wasn't the answer Anakin wanted, but it was more than he'd had before. Hope, however tentative. The debriefing covered the 3 Hydra facilities, the intelligence recovered, and the implications of Dormammu's attempted invasion. Fury assigned teams to track down the remaining Hydra cells and monitor for dimensional disturbances. As the meeting wound down, Steve Rogers approached Anakin. "We recovered something from the Sokovia facility," he said quietly. "Records on the Winter Soldier, his missions, his conditioning protocols, his handlers, and evidence that he's been deployed in New York within the last month. You think we can find him? I think we have to try. The man I knew, Bucky Barnes, he deserves better than being Hydra's puppet. And if your force abilities can help break their conditioning. Rogers trailed off, hope and pain warring in his expression. I'll help however I can, Anakin promised. But I should warn you, breaking deep conditioning is difficult and dangerous. If I'm not careful, I could damage his mind permanently. I understand the risks, but doing nothing, leaving him in Hydra's control, that's not an option I can accept. Anakin understood completely. If it was Ahsoka, if it was Padme trapped and suffering, he'd move the galaxy itself to save them. Then we'll find him, Anakin said, and we'll bring him home. Later that night, Anakin found himself on the compound's roof, looking up at unfamiliar stars. The constellations were all wrong, the patterns meaningless. Even the Force felt slightly different here, the same fundamental energy, but with subtle variations that reminded him constantly that this wasn't his universe. Can't sleep. Peter climbed up to join him, moving with the easy grace his spider powers provided. The kid had insisted on staying overnight, claiming he wanted to make sure Anakin was settling in okay. More likely, Aunt May had insisted he stay somewhere safe after the Hydra attack. Too much to process, Anakin admitted. Fighting dimensional entities, joining superhero teams, learning that my presence here is slowly damaging reality itself. It's been a long week. Try being a teenager with spider powers who accidentally let a burglar go who then killed his uncle, Peter said. Sometimes life just dumps impossible stuff on us, and we have to figure out how to carry it. They sat in silence for a while, watching the city lights in the distance. Do you think you'll make it home? Peter asked finally. I don't know, Anakin said honestly. Strange thinks it's possible but difficult. And even if I do get home, what then? How much time will have passed? Will the war still be going on? Will Padme even remember me? Time dilation between dimensions. It's a concern. Days here could be years there or vice versa. I could return to find everyone I knew dead of old age or arrive before I even left. Anakin shook his head. The variables are overwhelming. So what are you going to do? What I always do, help people, fight when necessary, try to be the person Padme would be proud of. Anakin smiled slightly, and maybe make some new friends along the way. Friends like me? Peter asked hopefully. Friends like you, Anakin confirmed, though you talk way too much. You say that like it's a bad thing. They laughed, and for a moment Anakin felt some of the weight lift. Yes, he was stranded in an alien universe. Yes, dangerous entities were targeting him. Yes, the situation was complicated beyond measure. But he wasn't alone. He had allies, maybe even friends, and as long as he had that, he could face whatever came next. In the darkness between dimensions, Dormammu watched and waited. The Jedi had proven stronger than anticipated, but there were other ways to corrupt, other paths to power. And Anakin Skywalker, for all his light side dedication, carried darkness inside him. Fear of loss, anger at injustice, pride in his abilities. All Dormammu needed was the right leverage, the right moment of weakness. And then the Jedi would fall, and through him both universes would burn. But that would come later. For now, the entity retreated to its dimension, planning, scheming, waiting for opportunity. The game had only just begun. 3 months had passed since Anakin's arrival on Earth. He stood in the Avengers compound's training room, his lightsaber moving through the fluid sequences of Form IV, Adharu, the acrobatic style favored by masters like Yoda and Qui-Gon Jinn. Sweat dripped down his face as he transitioned into Form V, then Form III, cycling through the different combat philosophies the Jedi had developed over millennia. Training helped. It kept his skills sharp, his mind focused, his connection to the Force clear and strong. "You're favoring your left side," Natasha observed from the doorway. She'd taken to watching his training sessions, studying his techniques with the analytical mind of a master spy. "Old injury." "Recent one," Anakin corrected, deactivating his lightsaber. "Caught a glancing blow from a Hydra plasma rifle during the raid on their Chilean facility last week. It's healing, but my body still remembers." "You should rest more between missions." "I rest enough." Anakin grabbed a towel, wiping his face. "How's the intelligence analysis going? Any leads on the Winter Soldier?" Natasha's expression darkened slightly. "Potential sighting in Prague, but by the time our team arrived, he was gone. Whoever's handling him now knows we're looking. They're being careful." It was the same story every time. Over the past 3 months, they'd chased the Winter Soldier across 4 continents, always arriving just hours too late. Steve refused to give up, and Anakin supported him completely, but the frustration was mounting. "Steve's not going to quit," Anakin said. "I know, and neither will you because you made him a promise." Natasha studied Anakin with those sharp, evaluating eyes. "You've adapted well to our world, better than I expected." "I'm a fast learner." "It's more than that. Most people displaced from everything they know would struggle with depression, isolation, difficulty connecting. But you've thrown yourself into the work, made friends, integrated with the team. It's almost like you're running from something." Anakin stiffened. Natasha was too perceptive by half. "I'm not running." "No." She moved into the training room, circling him slowly. "You take every mission offered, train for hours every day, rarely sleep more than 4 hours a night. That's not healthy adaptation, Anakin. That's avoidance." "Maybe I just like being useful," Anakin countered. "Maybe I need purpose. Or maybe you're terrified that if you stop moving, stop fighting, you'll have to confront the fact that you might never see your wife again." The words hit like a physical blow. Anakin turned away, not wanting Natasha to see how accurately she'd struck. "I don't give up on people I love," he said quietly. "Strange is still working on the dimensional navigation problem. Banner and Stark are analyzing energy patterns. Eventually, we'll find a way. And if you don't, then I'll have spent my time here helping people instead of wallowing in self-pity. That's what Padme would want. That's what a Jedi should do." Natasha was quiet for a moment. Then, surprisingly, she placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're allowed to grieve, Anakin. You lost everything, your home, your wife, your apprentice, your purpose. Pretending that doesn't hurt you is just lying to yourself." "If I let myself feel it, really feel it, I don't know if I could function," Anakin admitted. "The pain would be too much, the fear. So I keep moving, keep fighting, keep hoping that one day I'll wake up and this will have been a nightmare." "That's not sustainable." "I know, but it's all I have right now." Before Natasha could respond, alarms blared throughout the compound. Jarvis's voice echoed from the speakers. "Alert! Dimensional disturbance detected in downtown Manhattan. Energy signature matches Dormammu's dimensional magic. All available Avengers are requested to respond immediately." Anakin and Natasha exchanged glances, then ran for the hangar. Manhattan was chaos. The sky above Times Square had torn open, revealing the swirling darkness of the dark dimension beyond. Tentacles of corrupt energy reached through the breach, wrapping around buildings, pulling them toward the portal. Civilians ran screaming as reality itself became unstable, gravity revering in pockets, time flowing backward and forward simultaneously, dimensions folding into impossible geometries. And at the portal's edge stood Dormammu, his form more solid than before, more present in this reality. Jedi, the entity's voice boomed across the dimensional frequencies. You banished me once, but I have learned, adapted. This time I come prepared for your resistance. The Avengers assembled rapidly. Iron Man streaked through the air, his repulsors firing at the dimensional tentacles with minimal effect. Thor had returned from Asgard and now called lightning against the darkness, his godly power actually causing Dormammu to recoil slightly. Captain America coordinated ground forces, evacuating civilians while SHIELD established a perimeter. And beside Anakin, Doctor Strange appeared in a flash of golden light, his hands already weaving complex mystical patterns. He's using your dimensional scar as an anchor point, Strange said rapidly. The weak point your arrival created, he's exploited it, widened it. If we don't seal that breach, the dark dimension will consume Earth, Anakin finished. I know, what do you need? I need you to distract him while I work the sealing spell. Keep him focused on you, prevent him from attacking me directly. Done. Anakin ignited his lightsaber and launched himself toward the portal using force-enhanced leaps. Dormammu's attention fixed on him immediately. The Jedi returns, come to resist again. Your willpower is admirable but ultimately futile. This time I will not offer corruption. This time I will simply take what I want. Dark energy lanced toward Anakin from multiple angles. He deflected what he could with his lightsaber, dodged what he couldn't, and used the Force to shield himself from the rest. But Dormammu's attacks were relentless, each one testing a different defense, probing for weaknesses. Your power is impressive, Dormammu acknowledged, but you fight alone, disconnected from your source. The force of your universe cannot fully sustain you here. You weaken with every passing moment. It was true. Anakin could feel the strain, the slight disconnect between his Force connection and this universe's fundamental energies. Like trying to breathe air that was slightly too thin or drink water that didn't quite quench his thirst. But he'd learned to compensate. Anakin reached out through the Force, not to the distant energy of his home universe, but to the life surrounding him here and now. The millions of people in New York, their collective life force creating a vibrant tapestry in the Force. The Avengers fighting beside him. Even the plants and animals. The smallest insects and microbes. All of it was alive. All of it was part of the Force. And Anakin drew on that connection, letting Earth's own life energy flow through him. His lightsaber blazed brighter, the blue blade taking on an almost white intensity. His movements became faster, more precise, augmented by the Force as it had been, but now fueled by this universe's own vitality. Impossible, Dormammu hissed. You adapt. You connect to energies that should be foreign to you. The Force is life, Anakin replied, pressing his attack. And life exists everywhere in every universe. I was just too stubborn to see it before. He could feel Strange working behind him, the sorcerer's magic weaving an intricate seal around the dimensional breach. But it was slow work, delicate, requiring absolute concentration. Anakin needed to buy more time. Thor landed beside him, Mjolnir crackling with lightning. Your portal monster returns, I see. Shall we teach it the error of threatening Midgard again? Together, Anakin agreed. They attacked in concert. Thor's godly strength and lightning combined with Anakin's force-enhanced combat and precognition. Where Thor smashed through Dormammu's defenses with raw power, Anakin struck at weak points revealed by the Force. Where Anakin's lightsaber couldn't reach, Thor's hammer filled the gap. "You cannot defeat me," Dormammu roared, his form expanding, growing more solid as he pulled more of himself through the portal. "I am eternal. I am inevitable. I am." "Really annoying," Tony Stark interrupted, firing a massive repulsor beam enhanced by arc reactor technology. The beam struck Dormammu square in the chest, actually staggering the entity. "JARVIS, did we hurt it?" "Minimal damage, sir, but the entity does appear susceptible to concentrated energy attacks." "Then let's concentrate some energy. Hulk, you want in on this?" The Hulk, who'd been smashing dimensional tentacles on the ground level, looked up with a grin. "Hulk always want in." He leaped, clearing 300 feet in a single bound, and crashed into Dormammu with the force of a meteor strike. The entity's scream rattled windows across the city. But even their combined assault wasn't enough. Dormammu was too powerful, too vast. For every portion they damaged, more of his essence flowed through the portal from the dark dimension. He was winning through attrition, gradually forcing them back. Anakin felt desperation claw at him. They were losing. Strange needed more time, but they couldn't give it. Dormammu would overwhelm them, consume the earth, and then Anakin felt it. Through the Force, through the dimensional scar that connected this universe to his own. "Padme." It was impossible. The distance was too vast, the dimensional barriers too thick. But for just a moment he felt her presence, warm, loving, concerned. Like she was reaching out across infinity itself, drawn by his desperation. And with her presence came clarity. He'd been fighting Dormammu's power with power, matching force with force. But that wasn't how you defeated corruption. You defeated it by showing an alternative, by offering hope instead of despair, light instead of darkness, by reminding people what they were fighting for. Anakin reached out through the Force, not to attack Dormammu but to touch the minds of everyone fighting. The Avengers, the SHIELD agents, the civilians hiding in buildings. He shared with them what he felt, not fear or anger but determination. Love. The absolute conviction that this world was worth defending, these people worth saving. He showed them Padme's compassion, Ahsoka's fierce loyalty, Obi-Wan's steady wisdom. He shared the light side of the Force itself, the energy of peace and life that stood in opposition to corruption and death. And Earth's defenders responded. Thor's lightning burned brighter, fueled not by rage but by love for his adopted home. The Hulk's strength increased, but tempered now with Banner's protective instinct for the innocent. Tony's repulsors blazed with renewed intensity, channeling his determination to never let his technology fail to protect people. Even Strange's magic intensified, the golden patterns of his spell glowing like miniature suns as Anakin's force boost augmented his mystical abilities. Together, unified by shared purpose and borrowed light, they pushed back. Dormammu shrieked as his essence was driven backward, forced toward the diminishing portal. "No, I will not be denied. I will consume this reality. I will." "You will leave," Strange said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "By the Vishanti's light, by the Seraphim's power, by the ancient compact sealed in blood and time, I, Stephen Strange, Sorcerer Supreme, banish you from this dimension." The spell completed, a web of golden light that wrapped around the portal and crushed it closed. Dormammu's scream cut off abruptly as the gateway sealed, leaving only unmarked sky where the breach had been. Silence fell over Manhattan. Then cheering erupted from the civilians who'd witnessed the battle. The Avengers landed, exhausted but victorious, as SHIELD teams moved in to secure the area. Anakin deactivated his lightsaber, his hands shaking from the effort of channeling so much Force energy. He touched hundreds of minds simultaneously, shared his inner light with them. It was something only the most powerful Jedi Masters could do, and he'd managed it through desperation and love. Strange approached, his own hands trembling from the mystical exertion. That was remarkable. I've never seen anything like what you did. You connected everyone, unified our efforts through pure will. Battle meditation, Anakin explained. An advanced Force technique. Jedi generals use it to coordinate armies, boost morale, turn the tide of battles. I've only managed it a few times before and never on that scale. Well, it worked. And more importantly, Strange's expression grew serious. It showed me something. When you reached across dimensions to draw on that presence, that connection to someone you love, you created a temporary pathway, a beacon I could analyze. Anakin's heart rate spiked. You mean? I think I can find your universe now. The resonance pattern your emotional connection created, it's unique, identifiable. With time and preparation, I believe I can open a stable portal to your home dimension. Hope surged through Anakin with almost painful intensity. How long? Weeks, maybe months. The calculations are complex, and I'll need to prepare extensively. Opening a trans-universal portal isn't like stepping through a doorway. We're talking about breaching barriers that separate entire realities. One mistake could strand you in the wrong universe, or worse, damage the dimensional fabric catastrophically. But it's possible. It's possible, Strange confirmed. For the first time since your arrival, I can say with confidence that getting you home is achievable. Steve Rogers joined them, his shield slung across his back. That's great news, Anakin. Really great. But it also means you'll be leaving eventually. The realization hit Anakin hard. He'd spent 3 months here, fighting alongside the Avengers, making friends, building connections. Peter had become like a younger brother. Natasha's sharp insights had helped him process his displacement. Banner's understanding of internal struggles had eased his loneliness. Even Tony's sarcasm had grown endearing. And Steve, Captain America, had shown him what it meant to maintain hope and principles in a world that constantly challenged both. Had become the kind of mentor Anakin desperately needed. Not immediately, Anakin said. Strange said weeks or months, and I won't leave until we've found the Winter Soldier. I made you a promise, Steve. I keep my promises. Steve's gratitude was evident in his eyes. Thank you. The celebration at the Avengers compound that night was subdued but genuine. They'd stopped Dormammu's second invasion, prevented the dark dimension from consuming Earth, and made progress on returning Anakin home. All victories worth acknowledging. Peter had brought his Aunt May to meet everyone, and watching the teenager nervously introduce his family to literal gods and super soldiers was both endearing and amusing. May Parker turned out to be a formidable woman who treated the Avengers with friendly familiarity and grilled Anakin extensively about keeping her nephew safe during missions. He's a good kid, Anakin assured her. Brave, smart, always thinking about others before himself. You raised him well. Ben and I did our best, May said, her voice soft with remembered grief. Peter told me you lost someone too, someone important. My mother, Anakin confirmed. Years ago, I was too late to save her. I'm sorry. That kind of loss never fully heals, does it? We just learn to carry it better. They stood together quietly, two people bonded by shared grief and love for Peter Parker. Across the room, Tony was explaining dimensional theory to Thor, who was nodding politely while clearly understanding perhaps one word in 10. Banner and Strange debated the intersection of science and magic. Natasha, Clint Barton, who'd recently returned from a mission, and Steve discussed tactical approaches to Winter Soldier tracking. For a moment, Anakin let himself simply exist in this space, to be present, surrounded by people who'd become friends and allies, to not worry about dimensional scars or dark side corruption or impossible journeys home. Just to be Anakin Skywalker, Jedi Knight, welcomed among heroes. You look contemplative, a familiar voice said. Anakin turned to find Nick Fury approaching, a glass of something amber in his hand. The director rarely attended social gatherings, his presence marking this as significant. Just thinking about how much has changed in 3 months, Anakin admitted. You've become one of Earth's defenders, Fury said. Helped stop 3 major Hydra operations, prevented 2-dimensional invasions, saved countless lives. The planet's safer with you here, Skywalker. But it's also in danger because I'm here, Anakin countered. The dimensional scar Strange mentioned, my presence causes it. Every day I remain, I'm weakening the barriers that protect this universe. Every day you remain, you're also helping protect this universe from threats that exploit those weaknesses. It's a trade-off. Fury sipped his drink. Besides, Strange seems confident he can seal the scar once you're gone. Repair the damage, reinforce the barriers. Your presence here will have been temporary disruption, not permanent catastrophe. Unless something goes wrong with the portal. Unless I get stranded between dimensions, or the pathway collapses, or 1,000 other things that might not happen, Fury interrupted. I've learned that planning for every possibility is how you go crazy. Sometimes you just have to trust your team and take the leap. Is that advice or an order, director? Neither, just observation from someone who's made too many impossible choices to count. Fury's single eye fixed on Anakin with characteristic intensity. When the portal opens, when you get your chance to go home, are you going to take it? The question caught Anakin off guard. Of course. My wife is there, my apprentice, my responsibilities to the Republic. Your duty, Fury said. But what about what you want? If you had a choice, completely free of obligations and expectations, would you choose to stay or go? Anakin opened his mouth to answer, then closed it, because the honest truth was, he didn't know. 3 months ago, the answer would have been immediate and absolute. Go home. No hesitation, no doubt. But now, having formed connections here, having found purpose and friendship, and a team that valued him for who he was rather than what prophecies said he should be. I don't know, Anakin admitted quietly. And that terrifies me, because I love Padme more than anything, but I've also been happy here, free in ways I never was as a Jedi. No council questioning my methods, no politicians manipulating my missions, no prophecy defining my destiny. Just me, choosing to help people because it's right. That's called growth, Fury said. Recognizing you have options isn't betrayal of your old life. It's acknowledging you're more than your obligations. Padme would agree with you, Anakin said with a slight smile. She's always telling me I need to think about what I want, not just what the Council or the Republic wants. Smart woman, you should listen to her. Before Anakin could respond, alarms blared, different from attack warnings, more urgent. JARVIS spoke. Director Fury, urgent message from SHIELD surveillance. The Winter Soldier has been spotted in New York City. Current location, Brooklyn near the Captain America Memorial. He appears to be observing it, not moving, just standing and staring. Steve was across the room in seconds. Where exactly? Transmitting coordinates now, Captain. But sir, initial reports suggest the Winter Soldier is not engaging in hostile activity. He seems confused. Anakin met Steve's gaze. They both understood what this meant. The conditioning might be breaking down. The real Bucky Barnes might be fighting through. We need to go now, Steve said, before Hydra realizes where he is and extracts him. Agreed, Anakin said, but carefully. If his mind is fragile, if he's in the middle of breaking through the conditioning, we can't just charge in. We need to be gentle, controlled. I'll come too, Natasha offered. If it is Bucky, he might remember me. I encountered the Winter Soldier years ago during a mission, made an impression. Then let's move, Steve said, already heading for the hangar. The Captain America Memorial stood in a quiet corner of Brooklyn, a statue of Steve in his World War II uniform, shield raised, eternally defending freedom. A plaque listed the names of the Howling Commandos, the elite unit Steve had led during the war. And standing before that plaque, staring at one name in particular, was the Winter Soldier. Anakin approached cautiously, his force sense extended, reading the turmoil in the man's mind. The conditioning was indeed breaking down, memories surfacing in fragmentary flashes. But the programming fought back viciously, creating a mental battlefield that threatened to tear the Winter Soldier's psyche apart. Bucky, Steve called softly, emerging from cover. The Winter Soldier spun, his metal arm raised defensively. But he didn't attack. His eyes, blue and confused and haunted, fixed on Steve with something like recognition. I know you, the Winter Soldier said haltingly. You're Steve Rogers. You were smaller, skinny, always getting into fights you couldn't win. That's right, Buck, Steve said, his voice thick with emotion. You remember, you're remembering. No, the Winter Soldier clutched his head, metal hand leaving dents in his skull. I'm the asset. I'm the Winter Soldier. I don't have a past. Mission parameters are clear. I don't. He looked at the memorial again, at his own name. Why is my name here? Why does it say I'm dead? Because Hydra wanted everyone to think you were, Anakin said, stepping forward carefully. They took you, Bucky. Took you and broke you and turned you into a weapon. But you're fighting back. The real you is still in there. You, the Winter Soldier's focus shifted to Anakin. You touched my mind before, showed me something, someone named Bucky Barnes, a soldier, a friend. His expression crumpled with pain. I was a good man once. You're still a good man, Steve insisted. You're just trapped, but we can help you. Anakin can help break the conditioning permanently if you let him. The Winter Soldier looked between them, decades of training warring with fragmentary memories and desperate hope. It will hurt. Breaking the programming, I've felt it before when they reset me. It's agony. I'll be as gentle as I can, Anakin promised. But Steve's right. You can't keep living like this, trapped between who you were and what they made you. You deserve freedom. You deserve to be yourself again. For a long moment, the Winter Soldier stood frozen, caught between past and present, programming and person. Then slowly, he lowered his metal arm. Do it, he said. If there's any chance, if I can be Bucky again, do it. Anakin stepped forward, placing his hand on the Winter Soldier's forehead. Through the Force, he dove into the man's mind. The mental landscape was a nightmare. Memories shattered and scattered, neural pathways rewired and corrupted, conditioning protocols layered like malignant growth over the original personality. Anakin had seen Sith mental manipulation before, but this was worse, systematic, scientific, designed not to control but to erase. But underneath it all, buried deep, was Bucky Barnes, a kid from Brooklyn who'd befriended a scrawny kid named Steve Rogers, a soldier who'd fought fascism because it was right, a man who'd sacrificed himself to save his best friend. That core self was still there. Anakin just had to excavate it. He began carefully unraveling the conditioning, using the Force to support Bucky's mind while dismantling the artificial constraints. Each layer removed revealed more of the original personality, memories flooding back, emotions long suppressed surfacing, the real person emerging from decades of forced imprisonment. Bucky screamed. It was impossible not to. 70 years of conditioning being ripped away, contradictory imperatives collapsing, the sheer weight of recovered trauma hitting all at once. But Steve was there holding his friend as he convulsed. "You're okay, Buck. I've got you. You're going to be okay." Anakin pushed deeper, finding the final core of Hydra's programming. The kill switch protocols, the loyalty imperatives, the absolute obedience conditioning. This was the deepest layer, the most integrated with Bucky's neural patterns. Removing it would hurt worse than anything yet. Through the Force, Anakin felt Padmé's presence again, that impossible connection across dimensions, her strength and compassion flowing through him. With her remembered love supporting him, he carefully, precisely, severed the final chains. Bucky Barnes collapsed, freed but damaged. Anakin staggered backward, the mental effort leaving him drained. Natasha caught him before he fell. "Is he?" Steve asked desperately, cradling his friend. Bucky's eyes opened, blue and clear, and for the first time in 70 years truly his own. "Steve," he said, his voice rough but recognizably human, I remember everything. God, Steve, the things I did, the people I killed, I." "Wasn't you," Steve said firmly. "That was the Winter Soldier, the weapon they made. You're Bucky Barnes, you're my friend, and you're free now." Bucky wept, decades of suppressed emotion finally released. Steve held him, and Natasha stood guard, and Anakin watched a soldier reclaim his humanity. It was why he'd become a Jedi, not for prophecy or power but for moments like this, saving someone, freeing them from darkness, making the universe just slightly better than it had been. The weeks that followed were intense. Bucky required extensive therapy and support to process 7 decades of trauma and recovered memories. Steve never left his side during the worst of it, proving that friendship could survive even the darkest corruptions. Strange completed his calculations for the transdimensional portal, building a mystical framework that could navigate the infinite multiverse to find Anakin's specific universe. The preparation required exotic components and precise astronomical alignments, but it was doable. Anakin trained with the Avengers, fought alongside them in smaller missions, and tried not to think too hard about the choice rapidly approaching. Home or stay, duty or freedom, Padmé or this new life he'd built. The night before the portal would open, Peter found Anakin on the compound's roof again. "Tomorrow's the big day," Peter said, sitting beside him. "You nervous?" "Terrified," Anakin admitted. What if I get home and everything's changed? What if Padme moved on thinking I was dead? What if the war's over and I'm not needed anymore? What if everything's exactly how you left it and you get your happy ending? Peter countered. You can't only plan for the bad outcomes, man. Sometimes good things actually happen. When did you get so wise? I listen to Jedi Knights who crash land in my city and teach me about responsibility and choice. Peter smiled. You've been a good friend, Anakin. Better than you probably realize. You helped me see that power and responsibility don't have to be a burden. They can be a gift. You helped me too, Anakin said. Reminded me that being a hero doesn't require following someone else's rules, that I can trust my own judgment, make my own choices. They sat quietly, watching the stars that would soon guide Anakin home. Will you come back? Peter asked. To visit, I mean, if Strange figures out how to make stable portals. If I can, Anakin promised. You're all. You've become important to me. This team, this world, I won't forget what I found here. Good, because we won't forget you either. The portal chamber in the Sanctum Sanctorum was a marvel of mystical architecture and scientific precision. Strange had spent weeks preparing, combining his sorcery with Stark's technology and Banner's theoretical physics to create a framework capable of breaching dimensional barriers safely. The entire team gathered to see Anakin off. Steve and Bucky, the latter looking healthier than he had in decades, Tony making last-minute jokes to cover obvious emotion, Natasha offering a simple nod of respect, Thor promising to tell tales of the Jedi in Asgard's halls, Banner wishing him well with genuine friendship. Even Fury showed up, his single eye betraying nothing but his presence saying everything. And Peter trying not to cry and failing. Remember, Strange instructed, the portal will remain stable for exactly 60 seconds. Step through and you'll emerge in your universe at the approximate spatial coordinates of your departure point. Time dilation should be minimal. Perhaps hours have passed there, certainly not years. But once the portal closes, I won't be able to reopen it immediately. You'll be committed. I understand, Anakin said, though his heart hammered in his chest. The portal began to open, golden light mixing with the blue of his universe's dimensional signature. Through the gateway, Anakin could see stars he recognized, constellations from his galaxy. Home. And through the Force, stronger than ever, he felt Padme. Alive, searching for him, her presence a beacon of love and hope. Go, Steve said. Your wife's waiting. Anakin stepped toward the portal, then paused. He turned back to the assembled heroes one last time. Thank you, he said simply, for everything. For accepting me, helping me, showing me that being a hero is about choices, not destiny. I'll carry that lesson home with me. And we'll carry your example with us, Tony replied. The Jedi who crashed into our universe and reminded us what we're fighting for. Not bad for a space wizard. Anakin smiled, then stepped through the portal. Reality twisted, compressed, expanded. For a moment, he existed between dimensions, seeing infinite possibilities, infinite universes branching in all directions. He saw versions of himself who'd never left Earth, who'd joined the Avengers permanently. Versions who'd fallen to Dormammu's corruption. Versions who'd died in the Nevada facility. But his path led home. The portal released him, and Anakin stumbled onto the bridge of a Republic cruiser. Alarms blared, crew members shouted, and a familiar voice called out. Anakin! He turned to see Ahsoka running toward him, her lekku flying, her face a mixture of relief and fury and joy. Master, where have you been? You disappeared mid-battle and we thought." She threw her arms around him and Anakin hugged her back, his Padawan solid and real and alive. "It's a long story, Snips," he said, his voice thick. "A very long story." "Well, you can tell me later. Right now, we're in the middle of a battle and, oh no, Master, look out." Anakin spun, his lightsaber igniting automatically to deflect incoming fire from a separatist fighter. Battle instincts kicked in, muscle memory taking over. He was home, back in the war, back to his responsibilities, back to the life he'd left behind. And as he fought, as the familiar rhythm of combat surrounded him, Anakin felt the Force settle around him like a comfortable cloak. This was his universe, his reality, his place. But somewhere in his heart, he carried the memories of another world, of heroes who'd become friends, of a kid named Peter who'd reminded him that power was a gift, of a soldier named Steve who'd shown him that principles mattered more than prophecy, and of the lesson that being a Jedi, being a hero, was about making choices every single day to be the person you wanted to be. The battle raged on. The war continued. But Anakin Skywalker fought with renewed purpose, carrying light from two universes in his heart. In the Avengers compound, Peter Parker stood before a holographic display showing dimensional readings. The portal had closed, the energy signature faded. "He made it," Peter said softly. "He's home." "Yeah," Tony agreed, standing beside him. "But something tells me this isn't the last we'll see of our Jedi friend." Through the Force, across impossible distances and dimensional barriers, Anakin felt their friendship still connected. A bond that transcended space and time and the walls between realities. He was home, but part of him would always remain with Earth's mightiest heroes. And that was okay, because love, whether for a wife in one universe or friends in another, didn't diminish by being shared. It multiplied. Anakin Skywalker, Jedi Knight of the Galactic Republic and honorary Avenger, flew his fighter toward the separatist fleet with a smile on his face and hope in his heart. The story of the Jedi who entered the Marvel Universe had ended. But the legend was just beginning. Word count, 4,498. Conclusion. Anakin Skywalker's 3-month displacement into the Marvel Universe proved that heroism transcends dimensional boundaries. A warrior from a galaxy far, far away found common ground with Earth's mightiest heroes, not through shared powers or technologies, but through shared values, protecting the innocent, fighting corruption, and never surrendering to darkness. His journey taught the Avengers about the Force, not as mystical religion or exotic power, but as a philosophy of connection, responsibility, and choice. In turn, they taught him that rigid codes and ancient prophecies matter less than the choices made in each moment. That loving people doesn't make you weak, it makes you fight harder. That you can be powerful without being controlled, principled without being inflexible. The dimensional scar his arrival created was eventually healed by Doctor Strange, the barriers between realities reinforced stronger than before. But the connections Anakin forged, the friendships, the lessons learned, the mutual respect, those remained untouched by dimensional physics. In the Marvel Universe, the Avengers continued their mission with renewed perspective. Peter Parker grew more confident in his abilities, carrying Anakin's lessons about trusting his own judgment. Steve Rogers found peace knowing his best friend was free, saved by a Jedi's compassion and power. Natasha learned that even the most damaged minds could be healed with patience and skill. Bruce Banner discovered he wasn't alone in fearing his own potential for darkness. And Tony Stark, perpetual skeptic and futurist, kept Anakin's lightsaber crystal in his workshop, a gift left behind, a reminder that impossible things happen regularly, and that technology and mysticism aren't as separate as he'd believed. He swore he'd find a way to reopen stable dimensional pathways someday, to check on their Jedi friend, to see if the bonds they'd formed could withstand infinite distance. Doctor Strange documented everything, creating detailed records of Force abilities and their interaction with Earth's mystical frameworks. The knowledge would prove invaluable when future dimensional threats emerged, when cosmic entities tested humanity's defenses. Anakin had shown them that powers from other realities could be understood, adapted to, even countered with creativity and determination. SHIELD classified the entire incident naturally, but Fury ensured the true story was preserved in the deepest archives. Future generations of heroes would need to know that dimensional travel was possible, that allies could come from the most unexpected places, and that the greatest weapons weren't always technological or mystical. Sometimes they were principles, friendship, and unwavering conviction. Bucky Barnes, free from 70 years of conditioning, began the long process of rebuilding his life. The Winter Soldier's missions would haunt him for years, but he faced those demons with Steve's support and the knowledge that redemption was possible. A Jedi from another universe had proven it by reaching into the darkest corners of his mind and pulling him back to the light. If that was possible, then anything was. In the Star Wars universe, Anakin's return sparked immediate questions and longer-term changes. Obi-Wan Kenobi demanded a full explanation of his Padawan's disappearance, listened to the story with growing incredulity, and ultimately believed it because Anakin's connection to the Force had evolved, deepened. He carried resonances of another universe's life force, a subtle but unmistakable difference that no lie could fabricate. "You've changed," Obi-Wan observed during one of their quieter moments between battles. "Not in bad ways necessarily, but you seem more centered, less conflicted about the code." "I learned that I don't have to choose between being a good Jedi and being true to myself," Anakin replied. "That the code is a guide, not a prison, and that my relationships with Padme, with Ahsoka, with you, they don't make me weak. They make me stronger. The Council might disagree." "Then the Council is wrong," Anakin said without heat or anger, just certainty. "I've seen another way, Master. Heroes who love deeply, who form attachments, who carry personal motivations into battle, and who remain good, honorable, effective. Love didn't corrupt them. Fear of love corrupts. Denial of love corrupts. But love itself, that's the strongest defense against darkness I've ever found." Obi-Wan studied his former Padawan for a long moment. "Perhaps you're right. Perhaps we've been so afraid of the dark side that we've rejected emotions that could protect us from it. Your experience in this other universe, it's given you perspective the rest of us lack." When Anakin finally reunited with Padme, their embrace lasted long minutes. No words, just the pure relief of being together again, of his impossible journey ending where it should, in her arms. "I felt you," she whispered. "Across whatever distance separated us, I felt your presence, and I knew you'd find your way home." "I had help," Anakin admitted, telling her about the Avengers, about Peter's friendship, about Steve's example of principled heroism, about the battles fought and lessons learned. "I'm glad," Padme said. "Glad you found allies who appreciated you for who you are, not what prophecies claim you should be. Maybe we should think about our future differently. not hiding our relationship in shadows but living honestly, together. The Council can expel you if they choose, Padme finished. You'd still be a hero, Anakin, still fight for what's right. You just wouldn't be bound by rules that deny your humanity. It was a conversation they'd had before, but this time felt different. Anakin had seen an alternative, heroes who weren't Jedi, who operated without ancient orders and restrictive codes, and who succeeded anyway, who thrived even. The choice was his to make. Stay with the Order and continue hiding his marriage, or leave openly and build a life with Padme while still serving the Republic as an independent operative. He didn't have to decide immediately. The war continued and his skills were needed, but the option existed now, real and achievable, in ways it never had before. Ahsoka noticed her master's change too, though she interpreted it differently. "You're calmer," she observed during a training session. "Less angry, less frustrated with the Council. What happened in that other universe?" "I learned that I'm not defined by what others expect of me," Anakin replied, correcting her lightsaber form gently. "That I can be powerful and principled without following someone else's exact template, and that the people who truly care about me, like you, Snips, they accept me as I am, not as they wish I was." "I always accept you as you are, Master," Ahsoka said, "even when you're being impossible and reckless and making me worry." "I know. That's why you're one of the most important people in my life." Their bond strengthened further, master and apprentice becoming true partners rather than superior and subordinate. Anakin taught Ahsoka what he'd learned from the Avengers, that teamwork meant respecting each other's strengths, that leadership meant trusting your team, that being the strongest fighter didn't mean making all decisions alone. The Clone Wars continued, but Anakin fought with renewed purpose and clearer perspective. He saved lives not because the Council ordered it or prophecy demanded it, but because it was right. Because he chose to. Because heroes, whether Jedi or Avengers, whether in his universe or another, protected those who couldn't protect themselves. And when nightmares came, when the dark side whispered its seductive promises of power and control, Anakin remembered Dormammu's corruption attempt. Remembered resisting because surrendering meant losing himself. Remembered that love, for Padme, for Ahsoka, for his clone brothers, for the ideals he fought for, was his anchor, not his weakness. The dark side didn't disappear. The temptation remained, constant and patient. But Anakin faced it with tools his displacement had given him: perspective, choice, and the knowledge that he wasn't alone in fighting internal darkness. Palpatine, secretly Darth Sidious, noticed the change in his prized prospective apprentice. The young Jedi seemed more resistant to manipulation, less susceptible to fear-based motivation. His plans to corrupt Skywalker would require adjustment, new approaches. But that was a battle for another day, another story. Thematic resolution. Anakin Skywalker's journey through the Marvel Universe explored fundamental questions about identity, choice, and heroism. He arrived believing his path was predetermined, chosen one, bound by prophecy and Jedi code, his choices limited by ancient traditions and galactic politics. He left understanding that destiny is what you make of it, that codes are guides rather than chains, and that the most important choices are the ones made freely. The Marvel Universe showed him heroism without rigid philosophical frameworks. The Avengers argued constantly about methods and approaches, came from wildly different backgrounds and belief systems, but united around shared values. Protect the innocent, stop those who would harm others, never surrender to tyranny. They proved that you didn't need an ancient order or mystical prophecy to be heroic, just conviction, courage, and willingness to fight for what's right. Peter Parker taught him that power and responsibility could coexist with youth, humor, and genuine joy. That being a hero didn't require becoming grim or joyless or emotionally detached. Steve Rogers demonstrated that principles could survive in a complicated world without becoming rigid or brittle, that you could compromise tactically while never compromising morally. Natasha Romanoff showed him that past mistakes, even terrible ones, didn't define your future, that redemption was always possible through choice and action. Bruce Banner proved that fearing your own power didn't make you weak, it made you careful, that acknowledging internal darkness was the first step to controlling it. And Tony Stark, brilliant, sarcastic, deeply flawed Tony Stark, illustrated that you could be supremely confident while remaining fundamentally good, that ego and heroism weren't mutually exclusive. Together, they gave Anakin something the Jedi Order never had: unconditional acceptance. They didn't care about prophecies or midi-chlorian counts or chosen one status. They cared about whether he showed up when needed, fought for the right reasons, and treated others with respect. In return, Anakin gave the Avengers perspective on their own struggles. His Force abilities demonstrated that reality held wonders beyond their science and magic. His Jedi philosophy, however flawed, provided frameworks for thinking about power and responsibility they hadn't considered. His example of resisting corruption despite overwhelming temptation inspired them to face their own demons more courageously. The dimensional scar his arrival created was more than scientific phenomenon, it was metaphor. Every person who enters our lives leaves marks, changes us in ways both subtle and profound. Anakin scarred the Marvel Universe with his presence, and it scarred him in return. But from those scars came growth, adaptation, strength. His greatest victory wasn't defeating Dormammu or freeing Bucky Barnes or stopping Hydra's dimensional research. It was choosing to resist corruption when offered everything he desperately wanted, choosing friends and principles over power and shortcuts, choosing to be Anakin Skywalker, flawed, passionate, sometimes reckless Anakin, rather than becoming someone else's weapon or puppet. And in that choice he found freedom. Years later, when dimensional barriers weakened again, when cosmic threats emerged requiring heroes from multiple realities to cooperate, the pathways Anakin and Strange pioneered became crucial highways. The Jedi's displacement had been accident, but it opened possibilities that would save countless lives across infinite universes. Peter Parker, grown into his full potential as Spider-Man, never forgot the Jedi who'd mentored him during that crucial period. He kept Anakin's lessons close. Trust your judgment. Embrace responsibility without letting it crush you. Remember that love empowers rather than weakens. Steve Rogers, when faced with impossible choices in later conflicts, often asked himself, what would Anakin choose? The Jedi's willingness to buck authority for principle, to trust his instincts over doctrine, provided examples that served the captain well. And somewhere, in the spaces between dimensions where reality grew thin and strange laws held sway, echoes of their friendship persisted. Bonds formed across universal boundaries proved stronger than the walls that separated realities. Dormammu, imprisoned again in his dark dimension, raged and plotted. The Jedi had escaped him twice now, but eternity was long and patience infinite. Eventually, another opportunity would arise. Another moment of weakness, another dimensional breach. But that was a threat for future heroes to face. The legacy Anakin left ensured Earth would never fight such battles alone again. What if Anakin Skywalker crashed into the Marvel Universe? He'd find himself challenged in ways the Clone Wars never managed, forced to question assumptions about power, duty, emotion, and choice, tested by beings who operated outside any framework he understood. But he'd also find friendship, acceptance, and perspective that would fundamentally reshape his understanding of heroism. He'd learn that you don't need ancient orders or mystical prophecies to do good, just conviction, courage, and willingness to fight for others. He'd discover that love wasn't the path to darkness the Jedi feared, that attachment could anchor rather than corrupt, that the relationships we form are our greatest strengths, not our weaknesses. And he'd carry those lessons home, changed by his displacement, strengthened by his trials, more himself than he'd ever been while trying to conform to others' expectations. The chosen one would choose his own path, the prophesied one would write his own story, the Jedi Knight would define his own honor. And across two universes, heroes would remember that sometimes the greatest gifts come from the most unexpected places, that allies arise in impossible circumstances, that hope persists even when separated by dimensional barriers and infinite distance. Because at its core, heroism is universal. Sacrifice transcends realities. Love connects across any divide. And a Jedi Knight, displaced from everything familiar, proved that some bonds, friendship, principle, commitment to protecting others, are stronger than the walls between worlds. The Force remains with you. Excelsior, more stories await.